A very good afternoon to you on this beautiful Wednesday, August 20th. I'm Robert McNeely with Right Side Broadcasting Network, our live desk, bringing you the latest news from the Trump White House. And for those of you watching on the West Coast, a good morning. We have a jam-packed show over the next 3 hours regarding interviews from all over the country, from your nation's capital all the way up to Anchorage, Alaska, where President Trump was just last week. So you want to stay tuned for some hard-hitting information and all that you've come to love here at your favorite live desk. Now, the Vice President, J.D. Vance, is with Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, as well as Special Advisor and Assistant to the President, Stephen Miller, touching on D.C. safety in the federal city and everything that's been conducted over the course of the last week. We know that crime is going down rapidly as a result of the actions that President Trump has taken in regards to home rule in Washington, D.C. And we have that video playback ready for you for your viewing pleasure. And as we get to that for you, stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. President Trump also changing all of the grounds really at the White House. You see the big flagpoles. You also will have a beautiful spot in the Rose Garden to enjoy the summertime and other festivals, in addition to that large ballroom that is underway as well, in case you missed. Lee Greenwood's proud of the USA right there in the Rose Garden, as is President very proud of the country, wherever you might call home, whatever zip code that is. We have the video of the Vice President and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Stephen Miller, the assistant, ready for you now.
We have a few reporters here. So, look, guys, what we want to do here was a couple things. First of all, we want to come and say thank you to the National Guards folks, to the cops, for actually keeping this place safe. If you look at what's happened in Washington, D.C. in just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just send a message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You've just got to have the political willpower to do it. And I think you hear these guys outside here screaming at us. Of course, these are a bunch of crazy protesters. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago when I brought my kids here, they were being screamed at by violent vagrants, and it was scaring the hell out of my kids. And one of the things that we've done already in Union Station in just 9 days is we've made it a place where people can walk around safely. They can bring their kids again. They can see this beautiful monument, the architecture. They can have a meal with their friends and their loved ones because, again, we brought some law and order back to Washington, D.C. So I want to thank Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. I want to thank all the people, the guardsmen here and the police officers who worked very hard. And I know that we've traded now some violent, crazy people who are screaming at kids with a few crazy liberals who are screaming at the vice president. But I think that's a very worthwhile trade to make because we want our people to be able to enjoy our beautiful cities. And the last thing I'll say is to the American people, D.C. is already safer than it was 9 days ago, but we're going to make it safer still to come. This is your city. You should feel free to come and visit here, have a meal, see all these incredible monuments, and actually enjoy yourself. And that's what we're trying to make happen. And I think that if we set a standard in Washington, D.C., that political willpower can bring some common sense, law and order back to these communities, then maybe some other communities and other cities will follow suit. So it's kind of crazy. You hear these guys outside. They appear to hate the idea that Americans can enjoy their communities. They do the fact that D.C. a week ago had a higher murder rate than Trinidad and Tobago, which the United States State Department has said you shouldn't visit because it's unsafe. We ought to be able to enjoy great American cities. That's what we're trying to do with the Trump administration. And we want to thank all of our law enforcement and National Guardsmen for making it possible. We made a lot of progress in 9 days. We're going to make a whole lot more. I'll let Pete and Stephen Miller say something, and we'll take a few questions from the reporters. So, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'll just start by saying yes and amen to everything you said. The American people, the residents of D.C. deserve a safe and beautiful city. That's our mission. That's what every one of these captains, lieutenants, staff sergeants, specialists, privates, they're here because they're patriots who serve the country and believe we deserve a beautiful, safe capital. And when I talk to all of them, Stephen, we've all had a chance to talk to them, they're proud of this mission. They're proud to be a part of making sure law and order is established here in the capital. We're resourcing with everything they need, working with our law enforcement partners. So the National Guard, the Defense Department, is proud to be standing with you and the President and ensuring we have a safe capital that is beautiful, that residents can come visit. And we're committed to this mission just like the one at the southern border and in Los Angeles. Our law enforcement officers deserve to be able to do their job safely. And American citizens, putting American citizens and our country first, is something President Trump has emphasized from the beginning. So thank you to these troops. I know I always liked the cheeseburger when I was in uniform, so hopefully we can deliver a few of those. It's an honor to be here with you, and also Steve, thanks for being here.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Vice President for bringing us here today. Thank you, Secretary, for your leadership, and most importantly, thank you to the men and women of the National Guard. I think here's the most important point. There are residents who lived in Washington, D.C. their entire lives. Their parents lived here. Their grandparents lived here. And they have lived for generations in intolerable conditions of crime and decay. There are parts of the city, I moved to the city 20 years ago. There are places where I've seen graffiti that has been untouched for 2 decades. There are homeless encampments that have made it impossible for families to use public parks and public recreation for as long as I've lived here. There are hundreds of residents of this city who are shot in street violence every single year, making it one of the most violent cities on planet Earth. And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of this city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots. They have no connections to the city. They have no families they're raising in this city. They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address another thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Stephen. A few questions.
Mr. Vice President, why are troops stationed here at Union Station on the National Mall instead of areas in D.C. where crime is statistically highest?
Well, if you've ever been to Union Station in the last few years with your family, you know that crime is actually extremely high right here in Union Station. You have vagrants, you have drug addicts, you have the chronically homeless, you have the mentally ill who harass, who threaten violence, who attack families, and they've done it for far too long. This should be a monument to American greatness. This should be a place where you can come and share a meal or go shopping with your family. It should not be a place where parents of small children are afraid to bring them because, to Stephen's point, we've empowered criminals over the people who actually need public safety in the city. So I think Union Station is a great example of what's possible when you actually have the political willpower to bring law and order and common decency back to the public spaces of the United States of America. So many Americans live in cities. They occupy these spaces. They know how unsafe they are, and they would love to be able to just live their life in places like Union Station without violent criminals making it impossible. We have changed so much in 9 days, and I thought it important to highlight how great of a space this could be. how easy it could be to actually enjoy something like Union Station if you just had politicians who stopped prioritizing violent criminals over the public citizens who deserve public safety in their own communities.
And to add to that real quick, we talked to a first responder before we came up here, said this is their #1 call location is Union Station for first responders. So it's not as if this is insignificant. In many ways, this is part of the epicenter. And we go to that and return it to a safe location that it should be. It also frees up resources around the city. And you've seen a majority of the arrests happening in a lot of those places that need help.
For crime
Will you extend past 30 days?
For crime.
Will you extend past 30 days? And do you think you have congressional? Will Congress go along with it?
Well, look, we'll ultimately let the President of the United States determine where we are after 30 days of this emergency order. I think that we're going to make a lot of progress over the next 20 days. I think that we're 9 days into this thing. But if the President of the United States thinks that he has to extend this order to ensure that people have access to public safety, then that's exactly what he'll do. If he thinks he doesn't have to do that, obviously he'll make that determination. But what we're going to do is try to empower these guys to do as good of a job as possible to bring public safety and order back to Washington, D.C. This is the national, cultural, and political capital of the world's greatest nation. And you talk to people, black, brown, white, so many of them are afraid to bring their kids into its public spaces. It's a shame. It's a blight. It actually should make every American ashamed that the world's leading superpower, our national capital, was unsafe for families to walk around at night. That is a disgrace. We don't think that it's acceptable, and thank God we have the presidential leadership to change it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Were crime statistics manipulated by the D.C. police?
Well, I think that crime statistics all over our country were massively underreported because a lot of people would pick up the phone, they'd call somebody, they'd try to get help, and nobody would show up. If you look at wait times, at 911 response times all across our country, but certainly in Washington, D.C., they were way too long. And that wasn't because of the D.C. police. That was because there was too much crime and too few law enforcement agents on the street to bring order and decency to this city. You talk to these guys. I talked to 3 police officers earlier. I've talked to the National Guard. They are so happy that they've been empowered to do their job, which is to make American streets safe for American citizens. And I think that empowerment is going to keep on going until we make America, and D.C. in particular, a safe place to be.
What evidence do you have or that the DOJ has? Are you going to be releasing it?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be releasing evidence of this?
Of what? That D.C. has a terrible crime problem? You just got to look around. Obviously, D.C. has a terrible crime problem. The Department of Justice statistics back it up. The FBI statistics back it up. Just talk to a resident of this city, this beautiful, great American city. Don't they deserve... we talk about human rights. We hear these people outside screaming, "Free D.C." Let's free D.C. from lawlessness. Let's free Washington, D.C. from one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Let's free Washington, D.C. so that young families can walk around and feel safe and secure. That's what we're trying to free D.C. from. And as Stephen said, it's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
Which cities are next? Are you going to target any other?
Mr. Vice President, thank you, Mr. Vice President. What are your thoughts on the establishment media's criticisms of President Trump's push to end the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, I'll let these guys jump in. I mean, look, on the Russia-Ukraine war, we'll obviously have time to talk about that. I think the president campaigned on being a president of peace. He's already ended 6 wars. He's trying to end another. I think it's kind of disgraceful that the American media is attacking the president for trying to bring peace to the world. But most importantly, the president is trying to bring peace to the streets of our own cities. I really can't overemphasize this enough. It's the greatest country in the world. We've got moms and dads and young families. Shouldn't they be able to enjoy public spaces without vagrants taking away basic public safety from the American citizenry? The fact that it's taken so long to bring common decency and law and order back to Washington, D.C. is an indictment of a generation of failed leadership. And I hope these guys know how grateful we are that they're doing the job that so many failed to do. They're actually keeping the city safe. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard. What's your message to that?
I'm sorry?
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard here. So what's your message to the majority of D.C. residents?
I'm highly skeptical that a majority of D.C. residents don't want their city to have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C. I don't know what poll you're talking about. Maybe the same polls that said Kamala Harris would win the popular vote by 10 points. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're going to grab a quick bite with some of the soldiers here and the National Guardsmen who are keeping the city safe again. I just want to say we're grateful to these guys. You guys are making D.C. safe again. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Russia saying today needs to be involved.
And the proof is in the pudding there with the Vice President and the SecDef and Special Assistant Miller with National Guard at Union Station, Washington, D.C. 46% down in robbery, 83% down in carjacking, all crimes overall down 8% since 9 days ago when D.C. crime has been federalized with the Home Rule Act via President Trump. We are now joined by Ryan Walters, the Oklahoma State Superintendent, who's bringing in the PragerU endorsed curriculum for those California and New York teachers who seek to teach in your beautiful state of Oklahoma. Mr. Walters, thank you for joining Right Side Broadcasting Network. Showcase with us what kind of civics test this will be. Will this be a requirement for all new teachers in Oklahoma?
Yes, I got to give Gavin Newsom a lot of credit. I mean, he is the most radical governor we've seen in this country. He came in and said our teachers are required to teach radical gender theory, that there's 27 genders, that there's no differences between the genders. And we said, listen, we're recruiting teachers using the free market here. We pay $50,000 for the top 10% of teachers across the country to move here. We do merit pay in Oklahoma. I know that sounds like pretty common sense, but you don't see that much in education. You can make up to 6 figures if you're a great teacher in Oklahoma. So we're getting teachers from all over the country coming in Oklahoma with our turnaround in education. And we've seen this radical war on our classrooms from the teachers union, from Gavin Newsom. And we said, listen, if you're going to come into our state, we've got to have the precautions to ensure you're not a left-wing indoctrinator coming in to undermine our education system. And of course, I called my friends at PragerU, Marissa, a good friend. I said, hey, you helped us write our standards. We launched PragerU in every classroom. Can you help us develop a test, an America First test to ensure, our teachers know the difference between males and females, like my 4-year-old knows, that our teachers actually understand the Constitution and the form of government we've got in this country. And so we're happy to launch the first test of its kind. And frankly, every state should follow.
Share with us some of the questions and the time of it and how many there will be. Is it regards to more civics or what's actually happening currently in 2025 America?
No, great question. So just to give you a breakdown, it's really two-part. One is the radical gender theory that's being pushed in states like California and New York. Can you define the genders? Can you define what is the differences between the two genders? Can you identify the facts in biology between males and females? Number 2 is a robust, we already require a citizenship test, a civics test of our teachers here. So what we wanted to see is, do you understand the basics of the American form of government? Do you understand the Constitution? Do you understand the Declaration of Independence and its role in our government? I mean, again, these are very common sense questions. When we roll out the test, we encourage all your viewers, go look at it, go take it. We've already had teachers from all over the country going, we want to take this test. So we're very excited to launch it. We're very excited to get it out there. Again, this should be common sense. When you're in a public school classroom, you're going to learn about whatever the curriculum is, what the standards are. You're not going to be forced to be a social justice warrior by a teachers union Marxist teacher whose desire is to not educate but indoctrinate.
Well, I think it ends up protecting families in 2 ways. First and foremost, you're teaching biological sex, what the actual property of the person is, and what God had intended through natural law. So you have that. Now there can be disagreement on, do I want to live my life this way? Do I want to live my life that way? But it seems with this test, you'll be able to actually dialogue that rather than the Marxist version of things saying, this is all that there is. And basically, if you don't agree with my indoctrination, there's the door. And then so that disservices students, because we've heard of too many occasions, whether it's K through 12 or the college and universities, where these students pretend to have an opinion in order to simply get by and get that good grade.
That's exactly right. I was a teacher for 10 years before stepping into this role. I was a history teacher. And it's so important. Teach the facts of history. Let kids come to their own conclusion. We teach it all here in Oklahoma. We have the best history standards in the country. We want our kids to be patriotic. We want them to be good citizens. We cover all of history. You're going to get everything. You're going to get those core principles. We have more about the founders. We put the Bible back in our curriculum because it's part of history. It's absurd that the left took the Bible out of the classroom. Again, that's up for you to have your own opinion on it, but it was there. The founders cited it time and time again. So again, what we're trying to do is give kids access to facts, access to history, access to real science and biology. And again, they will come to their own conclusion. What we're not going to allow are left-wing indoctrinators to say, no, this is the way it is, and I'm going to force my belief system on you.
You know, two of the questions I have come across that I really love in this, what are two parts of the U.S. Congress? Also, how many senators are there? And it's important because it's again, civics education. Most Americans right now cannot answer those questions. And even the simple question that we used to send our senators to Washington based on state legislatures putting them there rather than having the direct democracy and the popular vote. It's important because if you don't know where you're going, it's often because you haven't looked back in the past.
I love that. One of my favorite quotes from Winston Churchill is the further back you look is the further ahead you can see. And so what we're trying to do is, again, those are pretty common sense questions, right? Very direct. We're not trying to trick anybody. But what we are trying to do is make sure, listen, there's really three large goals in education. Number one, obviously, you want your kids to get the most out of their God-given talents. Number two, you want them to be able to get a job with those God-given talents. But number three, and what we've come so far from, is we want to create good citizens to continue America, to continue the greatest country in the history of the world. When you read our founders, when you look at the basics of education, where it came from, that was a big part of this. Understand the American form of government, why it is the way that it is. To your point, understand our history, come to your own conclusion, but look at those foundational principles, look at why decisions were made, and determine what you think is the best path for America to continue to be great.
And Ryan, I'm very interested in the merit-based form that you've seemed to help institute and create there in Oklahoma, because it's probably the largest difference from, say, the Chicago Teachers Union in Illinois that completely shut down during COVID. And the real tragedy about that is the fact that many of those students, K through 12, relied on their lunch meals from the school, both parents working, in many cases single parents, because sadly throughout the city of Chicago, and the reason for the spike in violence even prior to what took place during the Summer of Love and the COVID pandemic was the fact that many fathers were out of the house. But it was the Chicago Teachers Union that were in bed with the broad and national teachers union that would be very against your merit-based standards. So please showcase why this direction that you're taking just is more common sense for Oklahoma residents, but also how it defends the family.
Great point. We should never forget that. These teachers unions, they don't care about your kids. They care about money and power. That's why they held kids ransom during COVID, saying, federal government, give us billions of dollars or we won't go back to school. We don't care if the kids are going hungry. Some of the most tragic letters I ever received were from parents going, my kid's suicidal, wants to go back to school, wants to see his teachers, wants to see his friends. But again, the teachers unions didn't care. They wanted their power. They wanted their money. We should never forget that. And when you look at merit pay, look, our education system has been socialist to its core. So you're telling me if you're a great teacher, we can all remember a great teacher we had, you get paid the same as an underperforming teacher, as a teacher that isn't putting their best foot forward? That's absurd. It doesn't. You look at anywhere else in the private sector, you pay on merit. It encourages, it incentivizes the basic human nature, which is, hey, yeah, I mean, if you reward me more, that makes me want to do more of this work. So again, what it does is it makes sure that parents or that teachers are listening to parents. They're meeting the goals they have for their kids. They're actively moving the kid forward in their educational experience. And if they meet the needs of the parents, if they do a great job, hey, we're happy to pay you more. We want to pay you more. We want to keep you in the classroom. And so we already have 1,000 teachers on track to make $100,000 through our merit pay system. And we're just going to, it's growing. It is blowing up here. I mean, we've got, again, districts are now competing for teachers because that's what parents want. They want a great teacher in the classroom. We introduce merit. We introduce the free market, and it's going unbelievably well here.
Well, exciting to see how Oklahoma is taking the lead on this, and we can't wait to hear more. Have you started off the school year already, or you do that after Labor Day?
Yeah, we're just getting started. A lot of our schools are starting this week or starting after Labor Day, so we're really just getting started, and we're going to have the best school year in state history.
Well, God bless you, Ryan Walters, the Oklahoma State Superintendent. It's a big job, and really coming back from this COVID pandemic, the summer of love, where there was so much violence, the devil loves idle hands, and so many people moving to great states like Oklahoma because they want their child to have that American dream, that equal opportunity, and education is that great equalizer that we see from county to county across this great nation of ours. So please come back to RSBN soon and keep us updated, and have a great school year.
Would love to. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for having me.
And as we break down crucial issues here today on Right Side Broadcasting Network, we're excited to showcase not only the latest news from the White House, but not only educational topics like we just did with Mr. Ryan Walters of Oklahoma, but also how you can protect your wealth. We'll also talk to a friend of ours all the way in Anchorage, Alaska, where President Trump was last week for that historic summit with President Vladimir Putin that really kicked off events just last week regarding everything in these peace negotiations, as we saw the European leaders at the White House to kick off this week here at the White House, but also interviews with people that might inspire you as well, to a bus tour going across the western United States to the east and also the upper Midwest. You're not going to want to miss Right Side Broadcasting Network today, as we'll be on for the next 2.5 hours recalling and covering all of the crucial issues affecting you, the American people. Thank you to All Family Pharmacy, one of our great sponsors here at the network. It's 25% off ivermectin, mebendazole, and if you use code RSBN10 for an extra 10% off, you will receive life-saving medications that can come to you in as soon as 2 to 3 days. Ivermectin, mebendazole, again, 25% off. So this online pharmacy really doing what President Trump pledged through an executive order, stopping the PBMs, the insurance companies, from double dipping with their pharmacies that might be down the street from you. In some cases, these life-saving medications like ivermectin, mebendazole, NAD+, methylene blue, among many others, simply aren't available because Big Pharma is involved with either your insurer or the pharmacy down the street. So allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to online pharmacy that simply wants you to have access to these things. Pharmacists, doctors, scientists, nurses committed to your health and making America healthy again. Scan that QR code now and get access to antibiotics and 200 essential medications that you could keep in your medicine cabinet or take with you as you might be concluding those summer celebrations with Labor Day right around the corner. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Did you know that the Bank of America recently declaring that the dollar is in a free fall, a spiral in fact? So monetary gold, the wealth, security, and preservation champion, the best in the business, is asking you today to grab that complimentary presidential gold guide. No obligation, just simply so you can have a piece of history there, President Trump on the front of this great magazine, but to look at your options to eliminate IRA fees permanently. So call today, do not delay. 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. You could do that with RSBN4thegold.com. Again, call immediately to discover how you can eliminate those IRA fees permanently, not just for a couple of weeks, but to really revamp and boost your retirement and your savings. RSBNforthegold.com, 800-476-7790. Call today. Don't delay. It's important to have that financial health in order with everything happening around the world. But what it looks like is happening around the world is the fact that this country, leading the way in peace thanks to President Trump and his leadership. But again, where does that leave your financial portfolio? We are joined by David Schroeder of Monetary Gold, which I just highlighted, a great new sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Pleasure to have you, David, as the Bank of America just gave that big warning that the dollar is on the verge of collapse. The dollar has lost approximately 10% of its value even since the beginning of the year, and that debt grows every 100 days by trillions and trillions, even with these good new policies coming from Washington, D.C. So how can the American people preserve their wealth and their retirement in uncertain times?
Hey, Robert. Well, probably the simplest thing to do is to diversify some of your financial assets into precious metals. And when I say that, most people would recommend maybe 30 to 40% of your assets be diversified. And the reason why we say that is because if the stock market is to collapse, or if the dollar was to really collapse and be valueless, gold and silver and other precious metals, they still maintain their value. So there's 6,000 years of recorded human history. And for 6,000 years, there's been the use of gold and silver as a way to trade and to buy and to barter. So precious metals is probably the most easy way to protect yourself. And when you protect yourself, literally, if you lost all of your stocks in the stock market, that 30 or 40% you still have in precious metals, you would not be wiped out. You would still have money in your hands that you could still buy, sell, trade, barter with, and you would not lose everything.
Walk us through this new gold guide as well, from monetary gold, how you can preserve that wealth and your commodities. What kind of options are in the magazine? I love the feature that has President Trump right on the front.
So that's our gold guide. And basically, it's our presidential gold guide. And basically what it does is it breaks down all of all the things that are going on in the country and globally on the pressures that are coming onto the dollar. And so when we have like BRICS, for instance, we have de-dollarization, we have, like you said, the debt is growing by $1 trillion every 100 days. So the guide talks about all of these things, and then it kind of gives you a game plan, or helps you devise a game plan so that you can actually move forward in your finances. And literally, if everything were to collapse, Robert Kiyosaki talks about the everything bubble. The everything bubble is the banking system, the Federal Reserve, the stores, the credit system, everything collapsing around us. And if that were to happen, the only people who would survive would be those who have some precious metals, because now they have a way to buy and sell. And so the guide kind of goes through all of those things and explains, this is what's going on in the world, and here are some of the options that you can do to kind of protect yourself.
And break down BRICS for us, because sometimes the viewers might ask, just what the heck are these nations and what are they doing? And how does it ultimately relate as well to these ongoing peace negotiations, especially in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, because it might end up affecting your wallet?
Right. So BRICS started out as a block of 5 nations. It has now grown into approximately 140 nations that are all wanting to get into the new BRICS digital dollar. It's not our dollar, it will be their currency. And basically what happens is, when that currency goes live, those nations will then stop using the dollar, and they will begin to use that digital currency, which will then, right now we have the ability to, like Cuba, for instance, we can put up, say, hey, you're doing this, this, and this, and we're not going to let you do that, and so we're going to kind of cut you off. We have control with the dollar. With the BRICS digital currency, we won't have that ability to take rogue nations and put a stop to them. We won't be able to say, hey, don't do this, or we're going to cut you off and you won't be able to use the dollar, or whatever that looks like. And so when these nations come together and create a currency, that eliminates the use of the dollar. That is going to put pressure on the dollar and make the value of the dollar go down even further. And if we lose 140 nations using the dollar as their foundation, that's going to hurt America. It's going to hurt us in ways we can't even fathom. And worse, for those that are preparing to retire or are already retired, the value of their paper assets are going to lose value almost overnight. I mean, they're going to probably collapse, to be honest. And so we can't control China. China is heading this. India is one of the nations that's heading this. And there are a lot of rogue nations that want to jump on board and say, hey, we don't want to use the dollar. We don't like America. We want to stay with this. And so the BRICS digital currency is a currency that will block out the U.S. and allow rogue nations to do whatever they want without any interference from the rest of the global nations.
We saw a preview of this really in the last administration under Joe Biden in regards to the petrodollar with Saudi Arabia. It was a highlight truly post World War II and what George H.W. Bush referred to as the New World Order within his State of the Unions, which kind of got us scratching our heads in the late 80s and early 90s. New World Order, it sounds kind of science fiction, but we see these global alliances that in turn can harm the United States. And of course, a communist movement that was once put to quiet back post Ronald Reagan and all of the amazing work he did of peace through strength kind of rear its ugly head. And sadly, you know, in the States here, even with our elections, we have people that are full-blown communists, like in New York City, running for the mayor's office. So how can gold and silver, these precious commodities, truly protect the American citizen against the collapsing dollar?
So it will give you, like I said earlier, if everything were to collapse, and if you had, let's say you have a value of $100,000 in your retirement account or in your bank account, and you've put, let's say, $35,000 into precious metals, but you've lost everything else, you're not wiped out. You still can get up in the morning and know, hey, I still have life. I still have assets. My wealth has not been taken from me. It's not been wiped out. Even though things are collapsing around me, I can still walk out into the world with my head held high because I'm not wiped out. I still have financial assets, and I can take those assets and I can turn them into, you know, actual physical money if I need to. I can trade them for dollar bills and go and I can do whatever. But if the dollar has no value, then we're going to be trading literally in gold and silver. And I think right now there are 24 states that have already passed legislation that gold and silver is now a legal tender in those states. And then on top of that, I think there are 6, maybe 7 other nations that have pending legislation to allow silver and gold to be a legal tender once again in those states. So no matter what happens, if all the world fell apart and you have some of your assets in precious metals, you aren't wiped out. You're not dead. And if you remember back in the 1920s when we had the great stock crash, we had people jumping out of windows in New York and in California because they were wiped out. As soon as the stock market crashed, they didn't sell in time or their stocks were valueless, they committed suicide. If you have metals, you're not going to be jumping out of a window.
Yes, absolute tragedies that have happened, and history can teach us this from many nations, as you mentioned, David, for the whole of human history, dating back 6,000 years. And our friend Robert Kiyosaki, among others, who really have detailed this very, very clearly. Now, RSBN for the gold.com is where everyone can go for the presidential gold catalog to really look at what would help their assets and to permanently stop those IRA fees. Do you have any specials running or anything else happening at Monetary Gold that might make a big difference for everyone who wants to act immediately? Because sometimes time is of the essence, and many of our viewers might not have these backup assets of gold and silver to make sure that they don't lose out. God forbid the dollar collapses.
Time is of the essence. And so we have a special going on right now for your viewers where we will actually cover all of their IRA fees for the life of their account. But they have to call right now. This is good until the end of the month, and this is for the RSBN viewers. And so we will cover all of those fees for life. And if you have any wealth, if you've got 150,000 plus in your account, you know that those annual fees, those add up. After 10 years, you know, you've spent thousands just in fees, where those fees could actually go back into purchasing more assets to help grow your wealth and protect you. So if you call now, we are offering the opportunity to have all of your fees covered for the life of your account.
Well, David, we look so forward to this partnership and to really being with the best in the business. It's Monetary Gold. Can you give us some thoughts on the Kennedy Center Awards? Because I see all those beautiful guitars behind you, and you're a musician yourself. So what do you think about some of these nominees and President Trump hosting the gala that will be in December of this year, right around the holidays?
I think it's phenomenal. I don't know all of the people who've been chosen to be for these awards, but I think that it's fantastic that they've chosen Trump to be the one who awards these, and I love it. I am a musician. I've played all my life. It's a way for me to relieve all the stress at the end of the day from all of the work, from all the chaos, from family, from children, from everything. But I love the fact that it's Trump getting to do it, so, and not some wild comedian or somebody else.
And arguably, he has been the comedian in chief over the course of the last year. But thank you again, David Schroeder of Monetary Gold. We look forward to seeing you again, sir, on Right Side Broadcasting Network at rsbnforthegold.com. We're helping everyone get financially stable and secure with gold, silver, and those precious commodities. So thanks for your comments today.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
And we'll be on today through 5 o'clock Eastern. So thanks for being with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network with the latest news from the Trump White House. If you're just joining in, we have some amazing interviews and just caught a couple of today, whether it's education to monetary policy to the Vice President of the United States with the Secretary of Defense in Union Station addressing the National Guard and all of the wonderful work they're doing with some perhaps older protesters you could hear in the background. The proof is in the pudding. The crime going down in the federal city and the pursuit of peace. President Trump and President Putin working towards that last week. We'll have a friend from Anchorage, Alaska to highlight those events in addition to European leaders who are here this week with President Zelensky of the Ukraine working with President Trump, and we'll see what's forthcoming, whether it's that bilateral meeting between Putin and Zelensky or a trilateral meeting with President Trump present, as has been requested by Mr. Zelensky and Mr. Putin. So stick with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network as we take a quick commercial break. We'll see you on the other side.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. And we know that from that podium or within the James S. Brady briefing room, the superstar Caroline Leavitt really laying it out for the news media this week, not only in a recap of the MAGA Minute from last week, but also calling out those journalists that somehow want to play this as Vladimir Putin is simply winning the day, or the Russia hoax. It's hard to believe at this point, but some are perpetuating and pushing that narrative of Crossfire Hurricane and the Steele dossier. We know the truth is out there that the Barack Hussein Obama administration worked to usurp the duly elected and constitutional authority of President Donald J. Trump and his executive office per Article 2. It's unlike anything we've seen. And if Watergate bothered you, this should make your skin crawl, because quite frankly, that was child's play compared to an administration who was committed to pushing the United States under the rug because they did not want a duly elected citizen president to come down from his golden escalator in Trump Tower, a building he built in the middle of Manhattan in order to serve the American people. In fact, breaking news, President Trump will not be taking a summer vacation as a result of working towards the Russian-Ukrainian conflict and the end to it, bringing peace through that region. We've had 70,000 Cambodian monks adding their names to the official list, calling for President Trump to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And as we watch this story very closely, we are very encouraged by the MAGA Minute from last week, just highlighting everything that's going on, because you might have missed it, given that summer's kind of winding down, the kids are back in school, but there's success every day at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We could play Cut 7 from Caroline Levitt last week, the MAGA Minute.
Busy week here at the White House delivering results for you, the American people. Let's dive into how we made America great again this week with another MAGA Minute. The president implemented a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. to restore law and order following years of out-of-control crime that has already yielded more than 100 arrests for firearm offenses, narcotics, assaults, and homicides. President Trump visited the Kennedy Center, where he delivered remarks and unveiled the 2025 Kennedy Center Honors nominees. John Deere, Ford, GE, and AbbVie announced billions of dollars of new investments in the United States, and small business sentiment reached a 5-month high this month. The July inflation report came in below expectations, with real wages having risen every single month since President Trump took office. That means more money in your pocket. The president announced that there will be no tariffs on gold. 110,000 Americans have applied for jobs at ICE since it began its recruiting effort. And if you're interested, check out join.ice.gov for more info. Pending claims at the Department of Veteran Affairs are now down 37% since President Trump took office, because our nation's veterans deserve better. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard declassified more documents exposing the Russia hoax, and former DNI James Clapper, who abused his office in historic fashion. And in addition, FBI Director Kash Patel revealed that disgraced Senator Adam Schiff leaked classified intelligence to shape political narratives in his attempt to hurt President Trump. The president is now on his way to Alaska for a historic bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the hopes of ending this brutal war, and he will keep you posted on how that goes. I know you're not tired of winning yet, and neither are we. Make sure you tune in for more updates on next week's MAGA Minute.
And we'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, your live desk that is committed to bringing you the truth on a daily basis, with things like the MAGA Minute from Caroline Levitt, to unbridled access to your president, vice president, and the Congress. And Kalshi is breaking down the numbers games and the questions that are out there. Did you actually use this site during the Putin-Trump summit in Anchorage, Alaska last Friday? Questions like, who will win the Nobel Peace Prize? Who will Zelensky meet with Putin? Will he do that before January? It looks, relatively likely. Those of you who asked the question about the 3-second handshake, which turned into a 10-second handshake between President Putin and President Trump, you won a few bucks by trading on anything. Scan that QR code now, kalshi.com/RSBN. It's music, sports, politics, the culture as a whole. And I think you might have fun with this because you can treat this almost as if it's fantasy football, watching it in real time, these amazing summits that have taken place in the last few days in order to stop 3.5 years of bloodshed and conflict. Kalshi.com/RSBN, your go-to for all of those questions facing the United States domestically and abroad. And take care of your skin as you go out for those last-minute summer vacations, or you want to impress that special someone down the street and at your new location. Perhaps you're a new student here at Auburn University. You can't go wrong with Miracle Cream from angelpaste.com. They're a Christian-owned company. They hire veterans as well. With the original Miracle Cream, a vitamin B-infused, non-GMO, non-chemical cream, I've used it here on the network, and you saw how my skin became glowing. My hands looked perfect, and guys, I could still grip that tackle box using the Miracle Cream. So don't worry about your fishing and hunting experiences. It will only enhance those. And with the natural mosquito repellent and also a facial spray, you'll be able to paint the town red in the dog days of summer. Experience the miracle of this Christian-owned veteran hiring company out of Spring, Texas in the Houston Metroplex on the Gulf of America. Angelpaste.com, your true go-to for all skin essentials. As we cover the latest from the Trump White House, what's being done not only within the Beltway, but outside of the Beltway. In case you missed a recap from yesterday, again, the superstar Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, putting a certain fake news reporter in his place because, again, sadly, some in the American media would perpetuate the Russia hoax continually, although we now know who was behind the Steele dossier and Crossfire Hurricane, and a former FBI director who would rather spend his time spelling out 8647 with seashells on the beach. You think someone retired in that role would have something better to do, but regardless, here's Caroline Leavitt from yesterday, in case you missed it, really setting the record straight with the New York Times.
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday. You had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock was broken, but with President Putin by starting a dialogue. So these leaders, who this war is in their backyard, are very grateful that the president took that call and that he was there to provide them with a readout of Russia's thinking on this, something that was not done by the previous administration at all.
And those points taken very well, because we saw earlier in the week as well, European leaders with President Trump, with President Zelensky of the Ukraine at the White House, all being greeted one by one on the South Lawn, where President Trump leaves and comes back to the South Lawn via Marine One. So a great spot to greet these guests in the reception hall by the chief usher of the United States. It's Monica Crowley herself, who is focused on diplomatic relations and representing the United States with the highest quality, and someone who is truly, in many ways, born for the role. In case you missed this, the distinguished meeting and the greeting of European leaders at the White House just from this past Monday. And President Trump and Chief Protocol Director Monica Crowley, the Vice President in attendance, as well as the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the Treasury Secretary, among other cabinet officials, Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff, all welcoming European partners in this conflict, God willing, coming to an end after 3.5 years. And many Russians and Ukrainians, both civilian and military, paying the price over greed. It was something that should have never happened in the first place. And we do know now that President Putin stated that on Friday in Anchorage, Alaska, that if President Trump was reelected, he would have not invaded. And we know whether it was George W. Bush and the country of Georgia to Barack Hussein Obama and the conflict in Crimea to the auto pen, who allowed crucial ports and the eastern part of Ukraine to fall to Russia, and credits due to the Ukrainian military who did fight back in such a valiant way. It's remarkable to see how President Trump has brought the personalities of Vladimir Zelensky and Vladimir Putin at least to the table, and we'll see how that can be finished. A negotiation that marks 80 years since the victory over Japan on August 15th of 1945 and the end of World War II, and really the shaping of the modern world with different borders and lines. But you have to take someone at their word, and it seems as if the Russian Federation, in addition to Finland, Germany, Italy, France, the United Kingdom, NATO, and the leaders of Europe as a whole, the European Union as well, wanting to bring this all to an end in the best interest of every single citizen throughout every country. And with the United States, that does not have a dog in this fight, clearly wants the bloodshed to stop, as President Trump has stated on multiple occasions, even saying that if he gets to heaven, this is one way he hopes that will provide that path. He's very serious about this. On the way to Anchorage, Alaska, in fact, he said it's not good for his health even to get involved in this, and that ultimately the decisions will have to be from the Russian Federation and the Ukraine in order to make peace a lasting legacy of this administration. But we know whether it's Azerbaijan and Armenia to the Congo and Rwanda, Iran and Israel, Cambodia and Thailand, along with countless other historical conflicts that led to generational and decades-long warfare, in some cases extraordinarily brutal, targeting innocent civilians. This president has had an echo, a chorus, really, of people around the world, from the government of Pakistan, in fact, Pakistan and India, avoiding a nuclear fallout over trade disagreements thanks to this president, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to 70,000 Cambodian monks, Claudia Tenney in New York, the congresswoman, among countless others, officially nominating President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And this ultimately, if successful, even Hillary Clinton and John Brennan said they would put their names onto the list of nominating President Donald John Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. So something on our minds here, not only at Right Side Broadcasting Network, but throughout our country and throughout the world, as many Americans are of Russian and Ukrainian descent. And lots of native Russians as well in the great state of Alaska, where President Trump was with his Russian counterpart, President Putin, last Friday. In case you missed all of that, really a red carpet and an Alaskan summit that looked as if there were Olympics or trials even being hosted in the last frontier, with the Alaska 2025 stand where both leaders stood for pictures surrounded by F-15 Raptors, also a B-2 flyover with American fighter jets to really showcase the strength of J-Bear, the Air Force outlet and post in Anchorage, Alaska, somewhere where I used to cover local politics. You could sit out there on the Cook Inlet, not only take in the beauty that is God's glory in Alaska, also looking out to Mount McKinley, but you could see all of the incredible aircraft, whether it's domestic coming into the Anchorage airport or just down the road to J-Bear itself, with all the dogfights and the B-2 trainings, B-52s as well, that you would see flying overhead on a clear day. In fact, 82% of Alaska is not connected by road. So one of their big transportation methods, according to Secretary Duffy, is by plane. And that's why you see so many of the legislators, including former Governor Sarah Palin, flying to Juneau from their homes to get to the state capitol, because that's the only way you can really reach it other than ferry. So sometimes hard to drive throughout Alaska, but nice to take to the air. And that's why, as a result, it's an abnormally high number for those legislators who have suffered from fatal plane crashes, including the late famed Senator Ted Stevens back in 2009, and the Ted K. Stevens Airport, named after his name in Anchorage, Alaska. You could actually sit there on the bench there with a statue in his tribute. It's 3 o'clock Eastern. It's a joy to be with you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. I'm Robert McNeely. We are covering the latest news from the Trump White House, as well as having some great interviews for you today to dive in on a number of topics, whether it's education policy in the United States, to protecting yourself, your monetary wealth, and how gold and silver can protect you with those commodities that have lasted throughout human history for 6,000 years, in fact, and how Monetary Gold, our latest partner and sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, can make a difference in your portfolio. To a dear friend as well, who we'll be talking to momentarily from Anchorage, Alaska, on what's taken place in the last few days, to a story that might inspire you and how to keep on keeping on even when life throws curveballs at you. In the meantime, thank you to our sponsor, Cove Pure. Did you know that Utah, Florida, actually putting legislation forward recently to remove fluoride and impurities out of your water? Because we know that, according to JAMA Pediatrics, doctors and scientists have found that if a child is drinking regularly, say out of the hose, they're goofing around after mom and dad take care of the lawn work, or they're just getting the tap out of the sink, that IQ points can go down by over 2 points. CovePure.com/RSBN has a Clearwater technology to make sure that this does not happen in the United States of America. And whether it's Flint, Michigan, that tragedy from a few years ago, all the way down to the free sunshine state of Florida, surrounded by water, up to that beautiful glacial paradise known as Alaska, Americans deserve pure water. So drink pure and live pure using the Clearwater technology provided by CovePure.com/RSBN. A reverse osmosis system is no longer a luxury. It's really a must need. And look at how convenient and tiny that sits right on top of your counter, or perhaps in the kitchen or in your office den. Protect what matters. Get $200 off this amazing machine, CovePure.com/RSBN. Heck, you could have it right next to the coffee maker, so it's a double whammy. Always good to start the day off. It's healthy for the gut. Drink some beautiful, pure water from CovePure.com/RSBN. And then maybe you have the day off or a morning or afternoon to check on those pesky taxes. And in case you have any back taxes, you just started a business, or you missed that April 15th deadline, do not sweat it. Protect yourself from the IRS, but don't delay. Call today. It is 800-357-1415. That's TNUSA.com/RSBN. It is really your go-to to protect yourself from the IRS and settle those back taxes. These experts, these patriots at Tax Network USA, in fact, not only accountant experts, but some actually worked for the IRS themselves. And with 80,000 new agents from the prior administration, President Trump directing a lot of their help on the border, but regardless of that, make sure you're protecting yourself from the IRS and settling those back taxes now. The best way to do that, visit TNUSA.com/RSBN or by calling the number 800-357-1415. It's Tax Network USA Incorporated. Protect yourself from the IRS and make sure those back taxes are settled at 3:04 Eastern on this beautiful Wednesday, August 20th. Can you believe it is football season. We're in the preseason. Those college teams gearing up for great times as a good friend of ours joins the network, Junior Amave. It is good to see you, brother, all the way from Anchorage, Alaska. Please share with us just what's on your mind and the recent visit by President Trump and President Putin to Anchorage, Alaska.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's always great to connect with you, and it looks like you're doing wonderful work. And also want to thank the network for allowing me to come on here and really kind of share some perspective on my end and people here in Alaska. But I don't speak for a lot of Alaskans, but, you know, I am connected with a lot. So it's a privilege to come up here and talk about some of the things that have been happening this previous week with President Trump and also Putin, you know, using Alaska as kind of like the forefront of peace talks and really kind of showcasing what Alaska brings to the United States.
Yes, and it was once called Seward's Folly, and I think we know that that was actually miscalculated by those critics of Lincoln's Secretary of State, because Alaska helped protect us during the Cold War, watching over our Pacific Fleet with Jay Baer, and home to so many different cultures. I was so fascinated to be up there working with you, Junior, and what an amazing place. It truly is somewhere not only to go on vacation, but to understand the rich history and heritage of the 49th state.
Yeah, Robert, it's a blessing to be able to grow up here in Alaska, specifically in Mountain View, Anchorage, Alaska, which is recorded as one of the most diverse communities across the United States. So you are correct. It's very diverse as far as culturally here in Alaska, but it's also rich with the people. The people here are kind. I understand why Mr. Trump chose Alaska, because it's a great place where people live and a great place to talk about peace. A lot of the people that live here in Anchorage, Alaska, also across the state, are loving people. So being able to kind of showcase Alaska here, I'm proud to be a citizen here in Anchorage, Alaska.
And you are not just observing it. I like to share with my friends that I know Junior Amave because your humble nature, your Christ-like leadership, as we can see behind you, the Last Supper embroidered in such a gorgeous way. But you were the chief equity officer under Republican Mayor Dave Bronson, where I got to know you. I served there in the press communications office and also for some time under the new Democrat mayor, Suzanne LaFrance. Tell us about that role and how you were able to connect people in Anchorage, Alaska, but also help those young people realize the American dream and all the amazing work that they can do in order to prepare themselves for the tasks at hand.
Yeah, first, I just want to say thank you for recognizing the work that I did here, but I also want to recognize that the only reason why I've been able to do what I'm doing is through my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so the work that I've been able to do, whether it's in government or playing in the NFL, whether it's being a community leader, that's where my wisdom and my strength comes from. So being able to work underneath a Republican mayor and also a Democrat mayor, that is also a blessing as well, because I can see both aisles and really kind of cross the aisles and see where both perspectives are. And so being able to do that here in Anchorage, as in my position, to be able to do serve community members constitutionally in my position, was a huge blessing, where a lot of folks in the communities were able to kind of bridge the gap between government resources and local resources to where folks that are living here can really pursue happiness for them and their family. And so I was able to do that through my position in government. And after leaving government last fall, as you know, I've stepped into the consulting realm where now I consult executives about leadership development, that kind of stuff. And, you know, what's funny is we were actually doing a program at one of the schools here, which is Mears Middle School. Big shout out to the Panthers. We were doing a assembly talk about leadership for the kids. And while we were talking about the assembly, we heard the B-2 bombers fly over the school and it shook the whole building. And so to me, it was I told the principal at the time, I was like, hey, listen, we are in the safest place in the world right now. So just we're good. We got Mr. Trump here, and he's in Alaska, and he's talking peace. And, you know, we are in the safest place you could be right now. So it was a privilege to be able to kind of serve in my role in government, but also serve those in communities after my government position.
And what I love about whether you're giving these big speeches to these CFOs, these CEOs, or middle school children to really everyone in between, you quote saying, when you focus solely on Jesus, everything else will fall into place. And to connect the great state of Alaska with our home studios here in Alabama, as a 7-time NCAA champion coach, Nick Saban once said, focus on a little, you'll see a lot. But when you focus on a lot, you'll see just a little. And then, of course, you coin that brilliant term, let's eat, let's get to it, let's roll up our sleeves. You really call people into action, and you've used that not only as the highest ranking Alaskan official from American Samoa descent, but also in regards to your leadership development and really calling people to task regardless of their age or their background.
Absolutely. And, thanks for pointing that out, because I truly believe that God has a plan for everybody. And the plan in my life for God is to be able to lead in a way that brings people closer to Christ. And so as a kid, a little story I'm just going to share with your audience. When I was a kid, I actually passed away. So I passed away with pneumonia. And during the time I passed away, my father prayed for me. And he prayed in the emergency room when they were trying to bring me back to life. And I came back to life. And so my mother said that I was always tasked with something great that God had planned for me. And since then, my father has led in a way that kind of motivated me to fall into that role. And so whether I'm serving community members in government, whether I'm serving community members as a consultant, or just leading community members and students in leadership, I want to make sure that they see Christ so that they get closer in their relationship with Jesus.
Amen. I love that message. And for those who have not visited Alaska yet, can you give us kind of an overview on just how extraordinary it was? Because I feel very privileged that in my life that our Lord and Savior had us cross paths in our work together at the municipality, but it's really unlike anywhere on earth, and somewhere I tell people, wow, you have to make plans to go to visit or even go up and work there, because it will change so many views that you might have and really showcase God's glory in the beautiful geography and the outdoor culture that is known as Alaska.
So the beautiful thing about God and Jesus is that there's no borders on where God can make an impact. And so being able to be in the great state of Alaska, the last frontier, folks like myself and other folks have been able to touch those through the work that they do. So it's been great to meet many folks here in Alaska that are in that and that like to spread the kingdom of God through the work that they do. And it's great to connect with folks like yourself, who's now back in the area that you're at, and being able to meet you and be able to connect now to be able to use a platform to really kind of spread the message of Jesus.
Amen. I love that so much. And as you mentioned, I am tickled that you're on the show because, well, it's football season. So we need a breakdown from an extraordinary lineman as yourself, playing for the Dallas Cowboys, the New York Jets. What do you see with this season? Because I already went through one of my leagues for fantasy football, and I limit myself to 3 because I can't get too distracted. But I noticed, wow, this is really a season of those younger, more exciting rookies coming on board versus those veterans. Can they hold on? But gosh, I'm 37 years old, but 37, that's getting pretty old in a tough league like the National Football League.
Yeah, so it's very exciting. Football is America's sport. So football is probably the best sport in the world. And I could kind of talk about that because I kind of had a cup of tea in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And some of the folks that are going through things, it's interesting because this new group of NFL players, they've experienced something different that no other NFL group has experienced, where they had to go through the COVID lockdowns. They had to go through the different type of adversities with that and the different things that came with that. So they had added more challenges to being able to become a pro. So being a pro in the NFL, it's less than 1% for folks to be able to play in the NFL. Well, imagine all the other adversity that they had to go through to get to that point. And so it's interesting and exciting to watch these folks go in there and compete through all the things that they had to go through. And it just really shows how great America is to be able to give them opportunity to go out there and play football, but also be able to give people hope through the game of football.
And it's such an extraordinary platform for these NFL players because I'm sure they have in the room before them really they can live for themselves, go make a lot of money, go, be super famous and all that brings, but they can also really share the glory and the love of Jesus Christ. And you've been in the room where it happens. So how would Junior Amave, an alum of the National Football League, but also as a leadership development coordinator, officer, and someone who really brings hope through speech, how would you encourage them this season to bring the light of Christ into literally every room throughout America?
The greatest commandment, they say, is loving your neighbor. And being able to do that and being a vessel so others can see Christ through the way you live, I think that's one of the greatest ways that you can really share Jesus with others, is being able to love others and being able to be a light for those that are in darkness.
And Junior, where can we find all of your great work as you continue to shine that bright light throughout Anchorage and all of Alaska?
Yeah, so folks want to get a hold of me, whether they want to turn their school into a huddle up school, which is bridging the leadership skills from the NFL to the classroom, or executive leadership development coaching through juniorselitetrends.com. That is the website that they can visit to be able to get a hold of me, to be able to kind of transition their school into greater and better things.
Amen. Well, thank you, my brother in Christ, Junior Amave. I remember you used to throw that football right into my office because you were across from me. Always got a kick out of that. But a pleasure to meet you, and I consider it one of the highest blessings from God on high that we got to encounter one another and work together for the better good of the municipality of Anchorage. So thank you for coming on Right Side Broadcasting Network and sharing your vision and some of the highlights from the meeting last week between President Trump and President Putin.
May God bless you, Robert, and also the network.
Thank you, sir. And as we break down the latest from the White House and within the Beltway and outside of the Beltway, we see some press there outside of the West Wing. We have not a large schedule for President Trump today, perhaps some executive orders to bring you. If it becomes open press, we'll stay on that, as we always do at your go-to live desk for all things in the Beltway and outside, as we just experienced in the great state of Alaska. That's getting a lot of highlight over the course of these peace negotiations from last week on Friday into now, with the leadership visiting the White House from the European Union, NATO, and Finland, the United Kingdom, France, Italy, Germany, among others, who have really spoken their piece about a Russian-Ukrainian conflict that seems all, even though with their differences, want this to come to an end. President Trump leading on that with the Trump doctrine and peace through strength, as over the course of the last week, D.C. violence going down as a result of President Trump invoking that home rule. Thank you to our sponsors here at Right Side History and our broadcasting network focused on bringing you great sponsors like allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And speaking of that history, ivermectin, mebendazole, hydrochloroquine, and NAD+, methylene blue, all historically these medications, lifesavers when it comes to getting at cancer, when it comes to deworming and parasites, among other things. Now, the mainstream pharmaceuticals say that that's just crazy talk, but we've learned ever since COVID that you should have freedom of choice, whether it comes to mandates, to what you put or don't put in your body. And the doctors, pharmacists, nurses at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN committed to you, the American people, so much so that they want 25% off of ivermectin and mebendazole to make that more affordable for you at home. And then code RSBN10 for an extra 10% off. So why not dive in today for life-saving medications and antibiotics, among emergency medical kits that you can have at home stacked up in that medicine cabinet or on the road with you as you close out your summer vacations before this Labor Day. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, truly your go-to for health and peace of mind. And a great way to stay healthy is that good night's rest. No company better than mypillow.com/RSBN. Support like Mike Lindell and RSBN by shopping now over 2,000 different items at this great website. So call today. Don't delay. 800-836-7566. It's the MyCross for 50% off. MyPillow bed sheets as low as $24.98. And guess what? All sizes, all colors. And then the best deal that's out there, $9.98. It's under $10 for the multi-use MyPillow 2.0, something you could take with you if you travel a lot, you don't like to sleep in the hotels, you need a more comfortable pillow. This is your go-to. The MyPillow 1.0 changed my rest habits, and 2.0 will be even better. Free shipping sale. The master marketer himself, as President Trump puts it, it's Mike Lindell. Shop now, mypillow.com/RSBN. And as we thank our sponsors and the coverage today of inside and outside of the Beltway, let's take a quick commercial break. I'm Robert McNeely. Stick with us. We'll be with you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network until 5 o'clock this afternoon. Lots to cover. See you in a moment.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy lie before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. And welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. We are covering the latest from the Trump White House, the safety in Washington, D.C., just 9 days into the home rule enacting a reduction in carjackings, theft, and robbery overall. We saw Vice President J.D. Vance early on in the broadcast, roughly an hour and a half ago, regarding the National Guard in Union Station in Washington, D.C., joined by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Special Assistant to the President Stephen Miller. And now we have a real treat with Kenneth and Mary Sue Grime. Thank you for joining us here regarding your son's story. It's Jacob's story. I read about this and it was very heartwarming in how to, persevere and advocate for those that face difficulties in this life. We all know we're on pilgrimage as we're working towards getting to heaven, our true home. But you are a Colorado couple with an unforgettable love story, and it's really seen in your son, Jacob. And now you've put those thoughts pen to paper and share with us not only about Jacob, but how people can be inspired by his story.
Thank you for having us on. It's a pleasure to be able to share and talk about Jacob and our life story here. Jacob touched so many people's lives and impacted people where he never talked, he never could hear, he couldn't walk, and yet somehow he was able to communicate at levels that was unbelievable, to where people just were connected with him in such a deep level.
And Mary Sue, share with some of us how Jacob was born as a normal kid, but then after going 2 heart attacks and a kidney transplant as a newborn, many doctors just said, let him pass on, let this go. But instead, you chose to take Jacob's adversities with a never surrender mentality. And you did that after raising 4 children with that hope that most of us only can yearn for, and you got to live it yourself.
We did live it. When you are a mom, and especially a first mom, your son that is born to you is been taken away. Everything in you rises up. You become a nurturer, and you become fierce in what you do, and you don't even know where that came from. It's a God-given instinct. And as we waited through NICU, as we waited through surgeries, as we endured the 137 days of not knowing if his life was going to, if he was going to live or he was going to die, we were faced with many, many unknown possibilities. And the moment that the doctor suggested that we give him up was because we were young and he thought we would like to have the choice to live our life the way we wanted it. So with that facing us with the practical ways that we live out our faith, we said, we cannot go that direction. So we chose to trust in God. And what that came down to meaning was we put ourselves second. Jacob became first. His life became more valuable. And we knew God had given that instinct, but more of a faith-driven response. And as we went forward, we began to see how strong God can make a person. It wasn't even our strength. We began to know that our prayers were beginning to make a difference, that prayer really did work. And our prayers started out like this: we don't know what to do, Lord. And he began to answer, I do. And he gave us the courage and the inspiration. And Jacob was always an inspiration as he began to grow inside of our family. We knew every moment that we spent with him was measured. We didn't take life for granted. In fact, one of our favorite phrases is every moment we have an opportunity to choose repair or despair. And when we chose repair, that meant we had to work on our relationship, and we had to work harder in raising our children to understand that life is worth living, even when you have disabilities.
Well, it's a very inspiring, and Mary Sue, Kenneth, explain to us how maybe there's someone viewing today where they're going through something that they did not anticipate. Life threw that curveball at them, and perhaps there's not a relationship with God. Where would you suggest starting, and how would you maybe lean into the community in order to create that dialogue with our Creator and find that peace through a rather difficult circumstance?
You know, we're all looking for some kind of hope somewhere, somehow. And when we're faced with these kind of difficult situations that we were faced with, yes, we had known God, and so we pushed into that. But I would encourage the people out there watching that if you've never given God a chance, to go ahead and consider that, because he made the difference for us. This book was written so that people that are in despair, that are hurting, going through difficult times, whether it's with disability, kids, parents, relationship issues, divorce issues, financial issues, anything, that we can cry out to our Heavenly Father, and he is there, and he will be there for us. In this life, bad things are going to happen to everybody. And so some people get mad at God and don't want to give him a chance. But he didn't send these bad things to us. He didn't do this to our son. It was just life that took place. And we had a choice to say, okay, I give God a chance to help me through this.
We would open the Word. We would listen to music that was uplifting. We found our support group in the friends and the family who surrounded us. And eventually we were in a school system where we learned sign language, and we were supporting him through that. And we were encouraged by those people that surrounded us to continue.
I love it so much. And you've all put this pen to paper on your thoughts regarding this journey. How can Jacob's life and death continue to inspire children and grandchildren and countless Americans as they seek to live their best life and make a difference one day at a time?
Well, all I know is that Jacob affected his siblings. And they'll tell you to this day that we're not the same people if we didn't have him in our life. And Mary Sue and I will tell you the very same thing. Many people come to us and say, you were strong and God knew what he was doing when he gave you Jacob. And we both shake our head and go, we were just like anybody else. And when we had this baby, we had to push into God for help. And the truth is Jacob changed our lives. We opened our heart up and let him change our lives. And so when it comes to our grandchildren look at little videos of Jacob. Three of our oldest grandchildren actually got to have a relationship with Jacob, and they loved him and he loved them. He loved babies. He was into babies so much, and we always teased, well, he loved babies so much they couldn't run away from him. With his disabilities, he could hold them tight. And so that's why he loved them so much. But our grandchildren are so affected by the stories. In fact, we have one of our grandbabies has cerebral palsy, just like Jacob. Not as severe, but on her right side, on her right leg, on her right arm, exactly the same way as Jacob. And when she saw the first video of him, she couldn't stop watching it, nor could the other little ones. They all just wanted to watch because he captivated them through these videos. It was so sweet to watch.
He's very encouraging to anybody. As he walked through his own disabilities, and we encouraged his life to be flourish, he was able to look into people's lives. And eventually those people became different because of him. And we can't explain that. It just was a miraculous event that he was destined to be here. He had a purpose in being on this earth, and he had a life worth living to bring joy, to cause people to say, my disability isn't a disability. And that is a profound thought that we all suffer inside ourselves, but he suffered on the external and still remained joyful.
Yeah.
And after hearing the story of Jacob and your testimony today, I am so looking forward to reading Jacob's story myself. Where can we find this book, and where can people reach out to learn more and hopefully put that into their own lives and the perspective that you both glowingly share, not only in holy matrimony, but in family life in order to make their communities stronger?
Yeah, so September 1st is the launch date. It's going to be on Amazon, and I think you can pre-order right now a Kindle if you're into doing that, and then the hardback and the paperback will come out on September 1st. We have a website in YouTube. It's called Jacob Grind Story, and it's spelled Grein. We're on TikTok at Jacob Grind Story. Same thing on Instagram, and Facebook is Jacob's Story, the book. So lots of different platforms they can go take a look at. There's small clips and reels. He also has a website. We have a website up that's called JacobALifeWorthLiving.com. And you can go there and you can read about us and read about his life a little bit. We're just getting this all up and running. It's very exciting to us to see this happen, and people are catching on to it and are enjoying what they're reading and seeing.
Well, God's peace be with you in all of it, because it's stories like this that really showcase the strength of the American people and the dignity of Jacob's time here on earth. And our thoughts and prayers with your entire family, and really for being open to share that story, because in turn, you'll probably affect thousands, if not millions of people for the better without even knowing it. So it's remarkable to watch how God works in difficult circumstances to shine a light on humanity. And we know that he loves us because of his ultimate sacrifice on the cross.
And Jacob was that kind of a person. He resembled some of the scriptures that we would read. And we know that his the thought behind God's plan for Jacob was that he wasn't here, we weren't here to help him. He was here to help us. Mm-hmm. And isn't that the way that God works? It's never the way we planned it.
Amen. Thank you to Kenneth and Mary Sue Grine for sharing Jacob's story today, and a book you can find very soon on many outlets, including that very popular Amazon. But come be with us again very soon at Right Side Broadcasting Network, and thank you again for taking the time today.
Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure.
And as we cover the latest from the Trump White House, this has been a fun day to get a little bit away from the Beltway and talk to everyday wonderful Americans like the Grines, and learning how to persevere in difficulties and how peace can come through the most interesting ways, as this president, vice president, and the 119th Congress working on a daily basis to see that peace happen between Russia and Ukraine. And a president that has focused on that peace apparatus in Cambodia to Thailand, India and Pakistan, Iran to Israel, and even the African nations of the Congo and Rwanda. Now, with countless voices, including 70,000 Cambodian monks calling for peace, and the Nobel Peace Prize for President Donald Trump makes sense in this day and age, as so many things are going on that are quite interesting, are they not? Including sanctuary policies that gave way to a Florida tragedy. In case you missed that, 3 innocent Americans are dead after an illegal alien semi-truck driver attempted an illegal U-turn on the Florida Turnpike and caused a minivan to violently crash into the truck's trailer. The illegal alien is an Indian national who was granted a commercial driver's license, a CDL, by the so-called sanctuary state of California, whose reckless policies put the lives of American citizens at risk every single day. But instead of acknowledging tragedy, Governor Gavin Newsom callously doubled down, claiming that this policy improves public safety, giving drivers license to illegal aliens. Now, while Democrats put criminal illegal aliens over the Americans they claim to represent, the Trump administration provides no such safe harbor and is seeking to place the individual into removal proceedings. And according to Secretary Noem of the Department of Homeland Security, stating how many more innocent people have to die before Gavin Newsom stops playing games with the safety for the American people. And this is eerily reminiscent of something that took place in the late 1990s with then Secretary of State George Ryan in the Prairie State of Illinois. He went on to be the 41st governor of the state and was someone who was in charge of the license for bribe scandal. As a result, an illegal alien truck driver crashing into a pastor's minivan, his wife and family, a family of 7, with most perishing in a terrible way. A very similar story. And it's right that Secretary Duffy is requesting through the Department of Transportation that all of these individuals speak English, that they can read and write it, and that you have to be of legal status in order to operate these vehicles on the road. And we know Secretary Noem, as well as Border Czar Tom Homan, working diligently with law enforcement, local, state, and federal, to remove illegal criminal aliens and foreign terrorist entities that still exist in this country. And the One Big Beautiful Bill helping do just that, to fund it, with somewhere around 90,000 people applying for 10,000 open positions at ICE. So we'll stay on this ever important topic as it affects you, the American people. Thank you to Monetary Gold, the newest sponsor here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. You want to grab your complimentary presidential gold guide. We spoke to David Schroeder earlier in the broadcast. If you'd like to rewind and get his comments on how crucial this is to have gold, silver, and precious commodities in 2025, because according to Bank of America, the dollar is spiraling, and friends of ours like Robert Kiyosaki talking about diversifying your entities, your retirement, your savings, and all that you own in case the dollar goes kaput. And with the BRICS nations, now with close to 140 nations, many of them rogue, wanting to go to a digital currency, they're trying to invoke part deux of the New World Order that once President George H.W. Bush spoke glowingly of during the State of the Unions. But we know that President Trump is for America and for the American people and for sovereignty with his prescription of right-wing populism. So call now, don't delay, 800-476-7790. Ask how to eliminate your annual IRA fees for life. David spoke on this last hour, just how important it is when you're putting all that investment into the IRAs and how crazy it could be with all these fees. Well, this is the way to eliminate those permanently. Visit rsbnforthegold.com. 800-476-7790. Your go-to. Call immediately to discover just how to do that with the best in the business. Monetary gold at rsbnforthegold.com. And once you have some gold trinkets and some silver commodities and your wealth growing as a result of that, something that's defended the health of human savings over 6,000 years now, why not trade some of that with Kalshi.com/RSBN? Will Vladimir Zelensky meet with Vladimir Putin before January 2026? Who will win the Nobel Peace Prize? I think it's evident at this point who deserves Oslo, Norway's highest prize. Donald Trump. Now, Kalshi.com/RSBN. You could trade on anything, whether it's the Los Angeles Dodgers in their pursuit of winning back-to-back World Series championships, as the Florida Panthers did with the NHL and the Stanley Cup, to music and culture, politics, so much more at Kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on literally anything, as you might have a few more money in your pocket to do just that. So scan the QR code now, Kalshi.com/RSBN. As we enjoy this golden era of America, President Trump is recapping the breakthroughs in the Ukraine peace talks. In exclusive interviews, President Trump detailed an inside look at Monday's historic White House Peace Summit with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky and key European leaders, detailing this bold diplomacy that President Trump emphasized in his unwavering commitment to stopping the bloodshed and securing lasting peace, and rallying the European allies to lead on security and paving the way for an ultimate resolution to the war. Now, in case you missed it, President Trump said he arranged a bilateral meeting between President Putin and President Zelensky, stating that I thought I'd let them be the first to meet. They haven't been exactly best friends. It only matters if we get things done. I hope that President Zelensky will do what he has to do. He has to show some flexibility, too, in the process. Now, President Trump described his call with President Putin. I told him that we're going to set up a meeting with President Zelensky, and you and he will meet. And then after that meeting, if everything works out okay, I'll meet and we'll wrap it up. It takes, in this case, two to tango, and they have to have somewhat of a relationship. Otherwise, we're just wasting a lot of time. President Trump's been very clear on this, that this is ultimately up to the Russian and Ukrainian leadership. And again, two people who really aren't friends, but for the sake of saving Russian and Ukrainian lives, they should come to the table regarding all of this, as been promised by both sides. Now, President Trump underscored the situation's urgency by describing an interaction with a fellow leader. At the table, one of the gentlemen, he said, well, let's meet in another month or two, and let's see if we could start making some sense about this. You're going to have another 40,000 people die in a month or two? How about you do it tonight, according to the president? And I did. I actually called President Putin, and we're trying to work out a meeting with President Zelensky. Now, President Trump explaining further what surprised him about both Putin and Zelensky. I think the fact that maybe they're getting along a little bit better than I thought. Otherwise, I would not have set up the bilateral meeting. I would have set up a three-way trial. And this is doing a little, but better. There's been tremendous bloodshed, and we know that over 1 million Russians and Ukrainians have died as part of this conflict. Now, President Trump outlined how long-term peace in Ukraine can ultimately be secured. They're not going to be part of NATO, but we have the European nations, and they'll front load. And then some of them, France, Germany, and the UK, want to have boots on the ground. I don't think it's going to be a problem, to be honest with you. President Trump, though, rejecting any American troops defending Ukraine's border. You have my assurance, and I'm president. I'm just trying to stop people from being killed. It's that simple. So no troops on the ground from the United States of America on the Ukrainian-Russian border. President Trump also detailing discussions with European leaders. They want to get back to leading their countries. They've consumed with this far more than we are. They will be some form of security, but it can't be NATO because it's just not something that would ever happen. And finally, according to the White House, President Trump commenting on his relationship with European leaders, I really think they have the respect of our country again. A year ago, they would not have. They would not have even thought about it coming to the White House together as they did. Now we've become the hottest country anywhere in the world, and everybody wants to be here. And that is really true in this golden era, 200 plus days into the second term of the White House, as we cover and break down the latest from the Trump White House with a shot of Capitol Hill with congressional recess happening in this month of August. They have a lot of work to do and should be returning right after Labor Day, if not before. What a great gig it is to be a United States congressman or senator. Granted, I know you have to fundraise and run for re-election every 2 years if you're in the House, but there's a lot of them on vacation right now, and very important business to get to in our nation's capital. So we'll see what that has to do in the fall term as we cover everything here for you inside and outside of the Beltway at 3:45 Eastern. I'm Robert McNeely with Right Side Broadcasting Network, our go-to live desk for you, the American people. Stick with us as we cover the latest from the White House.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Do you have those bird killers in your neck of the woods? Drives me crazy when I have to drive from Atlanta to Chicago and I see them throughout the crossroads of America. In Indiana, President Trump's irritated too. Any state that has built and relied on windmills and solar for power, seeing a record-breaking increases in electricity and energy costs. The scam of the century. We will not approve wind or farmer-destroying solar. The days of stupidity are over in the United States of America. MAGA, as he holds nothing back on Truth Social, detailing not only the bird killers and how they're destroying America. Think about this. The Chinese Communist Party, they produced these through their partnership with General Electric, a once great American company. There's positives they still have as GE of old, but do you think that, think about this, Ronald Reagan doing GE theater, do you think he'd be saying, look at these beautiful Chinese Communist Party windmills, why don't you put them in the middle of your farm? I think not, and a bigger problem with that, as Senator Tommy Tuberville, candidate for governor of Alabama, detailed right on this show, as well as the Voice of Reason, which you can catch every Thursday night at 6 o'clock, the fact that 2.2 million acres of farmland in Alabama alone, still owned by the Chinese Communist Party, and the USDA chief, Brooke Rollins, as well as this administration, countless congressmen and senators, tired of the invasion by the communists and looking to scale back those terrible regulations so farmers here in America don't have to face the terrible decision of putting these nasty windmills on their farmland. So something we'll watch here at the network as it continues to develop with Too Late Jerome Powell. President Trump mentioning on Truth Social with Cut 2 that could somebody please inform me why Jerome Too Late Powell, that he is hurting the housing industry very badly. People can't get a mortgage because of him. There's no inflation, and every sign is pointing to a major rate cut. Too late is a disaster, and we've seen it on a regular basis because there is something that I believe. Covering and being involved in politics for as long as I have, every once in a while you get these independent commissions or nonpartisan as they claim to be, but there's always that person who tries to make it a uniform vote of their body. I dealt with this way back when I ran for the Wheaton City Council outside of Chicago. The mayor, then Mayor Michael Gresk, was one of those individuals. We always have to have a unified approach to everything. No one can have an independent voice. Oh, what a load of crap. I mean, it's just, no, everyone should be able to have their own vote and say in this. And you have a situation right now with a strong and robust economy, inflation going down, egg prices going down, gas prices going down, $600 billion in trade, in fact, between the United States and the European Union. And our friend Ursula was committed to that at Trump Turnberry. The European Union president herself stating that it's been unfair. And the United States needs to have an even playing field because they've been mistreated by European counterparts. A stunning admission. And that led to a 15% tariff in order for Europeans to access U.S. markets and a $600 billion trade deal, in addition to $720 billion when it comes to energy. And therefore, the Keystone Pipeline flourishing once again. Nord Stream 2 from Russia not bogging down Germany as the globalists would have it under the Otto Pen and previous neocon and neoliberal administrations. So this president using the power of the tariff, just like great leaders of the past did, presidents like Abraham Lincoln and William McKinley, to those like Henry Clay, who advocated for it, including our first Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton. Peter Navarro putting out a recent video on that topic and that historical perspective that free trade has to be fair. And one of the best ways to do that, the proof is in the pudding, tariffs. And another proof in the pudding, you got to watch out for yourself. Make sure that medicine cabinet is stocked and ready to go. You really can't be unprepared in 2025. And freedom of choice is really medical freedom. It's common sense. And this great pharmacy, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, wants to provide that for you when the PBMs and the insurance companies and other pharmacies down the street from you might prevent you from getting ivermectin, mebendazole, NAD+, methylene blue, in fact, over 200 essential medications that could save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections. These emergency medical kits and antibiotics also great to take on the road with you on your summer vacations as we wind down leading up to Labor Day. And fear not, the fall season, always a beautiful time to hit the road for those weekend fall foliages throughout the Northeast and the upper Midwest, and even down here in the Southeast. Always a beautiful time of year with football season right around us. Protect yourself with ivermectin and mebendazole, now 25% off. In addition to code RSBN10, that's RSBN10. Scan the QR code now, get that extra 10% off. And makes sense to stock that medicine cabinet, protect you and yours, and take these life-saving medications on the road. Michael Kunzler, the co-owner of this great organization, we interview on a weekly basis to detail just how important allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN is for life-saving medication. Also, if you want your skin to glow, whether it's impressing that new boyfriend or girlfriend, or if it's simply just getting rid of that dry skin, that eczema that's so irritating before that important business meeting as you're shaking hands with someone and they notice, oh, I don't like this guy's hands. Well, solve all that problem by going to angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle today. It's a vitamin B infused cream, non-GMO, no chemicals, and they also have a natural facial spray and a mosquito repellent that is not harmful to humans nor harmful to the pets as you enjoy those final barbecues. So get out there and paint the town red. The best way to do it, The Miracle at angelpaste.com. They're Christian owned. They hire veterans. They're based out of Spring, Texas. It's right off the Gulf of America in the Houston Metroplex in the Lone Star State of Texas. Experience the miracle today, angelpaste.com. And speaking of Texas, where it's like a whole other country in so many ways, President Trump sending his congratulations to the Texas Republicans, saying the July statistics on the border having illegal immigration down once again. In fact, some of the lowest in history. And that U.S. Border Patrol reported 0 releases of illegal aliens into the country. So the Texas border is safe and secure, and the entire world knows it. So what we need to do is keep it this way, which is exactly why Texas Republicans will help us win the 2026 midterms and pass their new bill, as is for the one big, beautiful congressional map, as President Trump puts it, which look at how fair those lines are. Maybe Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois can learn a thing or two about these fair maps that we see here, that actually the lawmakers aren't choosing their voters. It's actually the other way around. Now, President Trump continues with the Texas House now in quorum, thanks to the great speaker, Dustin Burrows. I call on all of my Republican friends in the legislature to work as fast as they can to get this map to Governor Greg Abbott's desk as soon as possible. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And man, I am grateful for governors like J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom. They say, Robert, why? Why are you so thankful for them? Because they show their flaws. They show that gerrymandering now a household term, and they show their cards in the fact that what Republicans want, and I'm not defending the Republican Party, when they have power, sometimes they draw goofy maps. When Democrats draw it, well, we sure as hell know they draw some goofy maps, whether it's California or Illinois, Massachusetts, with no Republican representation in their House or in the Senate. 9 Massachusetts Democrats representing them. And throughout New England, we see this as a problem with the gerrymandering and people like Stephen Colbert, who will be sadly leaving us come May of 2026. The Late Show being canceled, as well as ABC's The View, maybe to make way for new media and common sense and actual comedy that doesn't berate you simply because of who you voted for. Something that really no comedian should berate any American citizen for who they voted for. But Mr. Colbert, of all people, held that Illinois map up towards Governor Jelly Bean Pritzker. And amazing to think about his answer for a moment. The fact that he said, a kindergartner drew it. Well, really, Governor Pritzker, a kindergartner drew that map. You signed that map into law in 2021. Oh, meanwhile, you split up the state of Illinois into 5 different territories during COVID while your family had access to their beautiful southern Wisconsin horse farm. So your kids could go horseback riding while no one could go to church or go to the gym or simply see an elderly dying mom or dad or family member in the nursing home. You locked everyone down. You forced those masks. And you stood out there during the summer of love. Someone who should not have been locked arm in arm as close as you were to all those people based on your own health history. But you were locking down other people with the same health history as you, sir. Love to have you on the show to talk about it. So I'll continue reaching out to your office and Governor Newsom to come on the show and simply explain why you are breaking federal law when it comes to illegal immigration and continuing to point fingers at your fellow countrymen for the maps that they simply want to draw. But here's my theory. Democrats want everything federalized. They don't want the Bill of Rights. They don't want that pesky 10th Amendment and states' rights, so that these laboratories of democracy, 50 states, 6 territories, can actually make decisions for themselves and govern themselves better than a centralized overreach from the District of Columbia. But as those debates continue, exciting news and an earlier interview with Jenny Beth Martin of Tea Party Patriots Action and the work they're doing, a bus tour that you will not want to miss. It started over the weekend and they're in Scottsdale, Arizona today. They'll come all the way back east of the Mississippi, go up into the upper Midwest and conclude in our beautiful federal city. So enjoy this interview we had today with Jenny Beth Martin of the Tea Party Patriots. Welcome to RSBN, Jenny Beth Martin of Tea Party Patriots Action, live from Scottsdale, Arizona. Tell us about this Only Citizens Vote, this new action on the part of the Tea Party Patriots and their action group. More than 80 Americans agree, as it says there in that big, beautiful bus. You're going coast to coast to share the truth about one citizen, one vote, and why that matters in a constitutional republic.
That's absolutely right. Thanks so much for having me on, Bobby. So we are doing the Only Citizens Vote bus tour, and our goal is to pass the SAVE Act into law. The SAVE Act will require proof of citizenship to register to vote. And this bill has already passed the House of Representatives 2 times, once in the last Congress and once in this Congress. So we want to get it through the Senate and to President Trump's desk so he can sign it into law. We think the best way to make that happen is to attach it to what's considered must-pass legislation, which might be a bill that would fund the government, for example, a continuing resolution or an appropriations bill. So we're doing this bus tour, working to generate more publicity and energy around the issue. And then when Congress comes back from comes back from August recess in September, we intend to deliver petitions on Capitol Hill and have an event on September 10th. And we're just making sure they hear our voice and that they actually get this bill passed into law.
Now, if I'm not mistaken as well, the last vote went 220-208, at least 5 Democrats joining Republicans in this. But the Democrats have been very against it. So I'm curious as to why would they be against something that's really common sense at the end of the day. In addition, is there any hesitancy on the side of the Senate? Why has it passed the House twice, yet the Senate is waiting until after the recess to handle something so crucial before the midterms?
Okay, so let me take that in 2. I'm going to address the Senate first, and then we'll come to Democrats and the common sense nature of this. So we can look at the Senate in a couple of different ways, but the most important thing for people to understand is that the biggest constraint, the biggest bottleneck in the Senate is their time and the time on the Senate floor. And remember, President Trump has over 100 nominees who have yet to be confirmed. And we had to get the one big beautiful bill passed and the nominees who've already been confirmed. Now, I personally think the Senate should be working more hours. But if I were the leader and I thought we might not get enough votes to get it over the filibuster threshold, any bill, this bill or any bill, I might be working on prioritizing other legislation and the nominees and then work on these kind of bills with the must-pass legislation like the Appropes bill. So there's just I'm explaining that to the audience so they understand kind of what I think the leader of the Senate might be thinking. As far as Democrats, and why don't they agree with it? We did have 4 Democrats who voted for it this session, and then last session, I believe there were 6. I don't understand exactly why they're not. Over 80% of Americans agree with us on this issue. We have polled twice. 86% of Americans are in favor of showing proof of citizenship to register to vote. Furthermore, the same percentage, or essentially the same percentage, agrees that American citizens should be voting in American elections for the American president, the American U.S. senators, and American congressmen. When we talk to everyday average citizens as we're going around the country, like at the gas stations and at restaurants, they're just like, wait, this is so common sense. It's crazy that it's not passing. So I think the Democrats are making a strategic mistake, and they're just out of line with what Americans want. I think they have nefarious reasons for not wanting to get the voter rolls clean, not wanting to ensure it's only citizens who are registered, and not wanting to ensure that in the future we are only registering citizens and we have that proof of citizenship.
And we really do have such a fair legal immigration system, and nearly all Americans, the wonderful people we get to talk to, they like legal immigration. They want people, we're descendants of, whether it's from Europe, from South America, Africa, around the world. It's so beautiful. You could be born somewhere else, come here legally, and become an American. We all share in the red, white, and blue and old glory. And that's my curiosity. As you start in California, you're through the Southwest right now, in Scottsdale, Arizona, going through Texas, really across the country this August and September, culminating in a big, beautiful rally in our nation's capital in the middle of September. Do you think the Democrats wanted open borders to replace borders, especially in those states and cities that voters were leaving, such as California, New York, Illinois, that saw droves of people voting with their feet going elsewhere since COVID? And then, oh, goodness gracious, we need actually new voters in our lineup in order to get elected.
Well, there's that. And then the more immediate benefit to them is that when you do the census, the money that the federal government sends to the different states for different programs, federal programs, is sent based on citizenship, not citizenship, but population. And it is appropriated based on population. So they have an immediate benefit with what Mark Levin would call negative power, getting more money and using that money for their own benefit from the standpoint of power. And then the same thing is going on as far as negative power goes, because then if people wind up registering to vote who should not be registered to vote, and in some states and municipalities in this country, they are allowing non-citizens to register to vote in state and local elections. So it does benefit them because they have a different constituency they can appeal to rather than American citizens, or rather than only American citizens.
What's your take on all this gerrymandering debate? Because we saw how Texas Democrats left for Illinois, some California, some New York, but really on the dime of Governor J.B. Pritzker of the Prairie States. And now they've returned, and it looks like they'll get back to business and redraw these maps that will bring 5 congressional districts more in line with Republican or a Republican electorate come 2026 and 2028. Do you feel a need for a nationwide new census as Texas and Florida move forward to make their maps more fair? Because you do water down the power of that one citizen, that one vote, because you're counting everyone in the congressional district, even if they are illegal per the last census.
Well, a couple of things about that. First, President Trump has posted on Truth Social that he wants a new census to happen. So I think we will be having that. I hope that in that census, they ask the question whether you are a citizen or not, so that we have that information as we are making decisions for congressional districts and for how money is distributed to the states. In 2021, the Census Bureau came out, or maybe the Department of Commerce came out and said there were errors in the 2020 census and that it benefited some states and harmed others. So it was benefiting California and harming Florida as an example. Not all states were affected, but some were positively affected and some were negatively affected. I think since they knew that immediately after the census was taken, they probably should have redone the census back in 2021 and just fixed the problem for the remainder of the decade. As far as the state of Texas goes, remember, they were responding to a lawsuit. They have been sued and some of their congressional districts were found unconstitutional because they made the majority of the congressional district based on more than one characterization. So they were grouping minorities together to create a majority group of minorities. And a court ruled, I believe it was the Fifth Circuit Court, ruled that that was unconstitutional. You can only, in the Voting Rights Act only protects one class individually, not a group of classes. So they had to clean it up because of the court case. And yes, politics are involved when you do when you set the congressional districts. We have several states where you have anywhere from 32 to 48% of Republicans voting, and you don't have any Republican congressmen at all, including in Maine and Rhode Island and Vermont. And there's several other states. Delaware is another one. And then in California, you've got around, I think it's 42% of Republicans voting. It's less than a majority, but the number of congressional districts for Republicans is only 20%. So the Democrats have been playing this gerrymandering game a very long time. Both sides of the aisle do it. And this isn't anything new. And certainly there are more Democrat states who have out-districted Republicans and pushed Republican districts out than on the Republican side. It seems the Republican states have been much more fair in the last decade.
And that's the case, too, for Massachusetts. And then going back to the prairie state of Illinois,
yes.
Democrat Chair Deb Conroy, the DuPage County Board, a big deal what she said regarding the Texas exodus of Democrats to the prairie state, which arguably has the worst maps, pointed out by Stephen Colbert, of all people, on The Late Show with Governor J.B. Pritzker, who said a kindergartner drew it, but his lawyers drew those maps, and then he signed it into law in 2021. So the height of hypocrisy. But she made in her comments, Ms. Deb Conroy, the Democrat chair of a county that is larger than 6 states by populace in the United States, just west of Chicago, stating that Republicans draw it this way, Democrats draw it this way. Is it unfair? Hey, yeah, I guess it depends on power. But I think this is what the Democrats really want, Jenny Beth. I think they want to federalize everything because per her comments, she said until all 50 states agree how to do this, then we can come to that consensus. And that's that language of we don't want states' rights. We don't respect the Bill of Rights. We don't respect the 10th Amendment. Am I wrong in stating that? I think that's really the difference between Republican and Democrats right now.
No, you're not wrong about that at all. And it's that same kind of thinking that we want states to be able to make these kind of decisions for themselves, and they are empowered constitutionally and from a civil matter because of federal law to do so. We have to remember that when we're dealing with election law as well. We don't want one election system for the whole entire country. Having each state have different kinds of rules. We want them to be strong and secure in all states, but having those different kind of rules does help prevent out of the country interference with our elections. So the attitude that states have certain rights and they need to be separate from the federal government, and we don't have a one-size-fits-all solution, that applies to how you handle COVID, it applies to how you handle election laws, it applies to how you handle gerrymandering, and pretty much everything.
And it's what makes our country so beautiful and really remarkable, because when you have a disagreement with one area, although it might not be the most convenient thing to do, you can move and still be an American. It's unique in this world when you really break it down. So Jenny Beth, tell us more about this great tour, where you'll be going, and it's a barn burner across the country as we somewhat say goodbye to summer, school's back in session. I know that Labor Day is somewhat the unofficial end to that summertime, but something for people to really engage in as they get prepared for the midterm elections next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So we began in California earlier this week. We're going all across the southern states. So we're heading the southern border states, but all the way from California to North Carolina. And that includes today in Arizona, tomorrow in New Mexico, we'll be in San Antonio. We will be in Baton Rouge, Montgomery, Atlanta, Greenville, South Carolina, and Raleigh, North Carolina. Then we reposition the bus in Wisconsin over Labor Day weekend, and we go from Wisconsin across to Washington, D.C., and we end with that big, beautiful rally on September 10th on Capitol Hill. And then most importantly, along the entire way, we have people filling out petitions, and we are hand delivering those petitions to senatorial and congressional offices on September 10th. So I urge people to get involved. Go to demandonlycitizensvote.com, demandonlycitizensvote.com. Join us on the tour, make your plans, book your flight, go to Washington, D.C. and join us there. And if we're not hitting your state, then hold a sign waving event and get people to sign the petition. And we have directions for how to do all of that at demandonlycitizensvote.com.
Citizenry in action. It's an amazing thing to watch. We'll try to be there with you, Jenny Beth, as well. RSBN would like to be location if it works out for scheduling either in Montgomery, Alabama, Atlanta, Georgia, or in our nation's capital of Washington, D.C., just to see this excitement behind this great tour. And for those who don't know, the Tea Party Patriots and Tea Party Patriots Action, way long ago, well, not too long ago, but you're looking back 2010 and slightly before that, you stood up to big government socialism and really changed the face of American politics for the better. How would you encourage someone in their neck of the woods to really go after it peacefully and patriotically if something is unjust or they see something they say it shouldn't be going on, especially city councils or school boards? How would you encourage them to get in the fight, get off the bench and into the game coming into 2026?
Well, join a group like Tea Party Patriots Action. Find a group locally as well. There may be a liberty group. It may be a political party. It might be Moms for Liberty. Whichever kind of group it is, it's good to be connected locally and at a national level. But then the most important thing, if you see something that is wrong, go and reach out to your congressman, your school board member, your state legislator directly. Give them a call, send an email, and start engaging with them and talk to them respectfully. You can be firm and respectful at the same time and express your opinion and talk to them about the issue. And as you get outside of Washington, D.C., and you get to that state legislative body and the local school board, county commission, city councils, it's so easy. Most of those people are very accessible and they want to hear from constituents. They even want to hear from constituents when they don't agree. So I highly encourage people to take that as a first step, then join Tea Party Patriots Action, and we'll help you with your activism and help you get involved further.
Jenny Beth Martin of the Tea Party Patriots Action. You also have a great show. Can you tell us where we can find that to catch all of the wonderful people you get to interview?
Oh, thank you so much for asking about that, Bobby. I have a podcast. It comes out once a week. It's called The Jenny Beth Show. It's on all the major podcast platforms. And we interview people. Sometimes it's members of Congress. Sometimes it is a local activist. And anywhere in between, we like to talk to people and learn what they're doing. If I meet someone who's interesting and I think they're doing something that other people would want to hear about, I ask them to come on my show. And we just do an in-depth interview so people learn about how they can get involved with other groups, learn about other issues, and we just seek to educate.
Thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you're busy on the road. Godspeed, stay safe, and we look forward to potentially seeing you in our neck of the woods. And what a great mission to unite America. One citizen, one vote, only citizens vote, as that beautiful bus behind you states. Jenny Beth Martin, again, of the Tea Party Patriots Action. We will see you very soon.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
And as we cover the latest from the Trump White House, inside and outside of the Beltway today, we are thrilled to share that Americans in all 50 states are benefiting, and we'll see a tax cut with the One Big Beautiful Bill signed into law on the 4th of July. President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill is the largest, most consequential tax cut on the middle class ever. And now that the Tax Foundation, leading nonpartisan tax policy nonprofit, confirms that between lower inflation, massive investments, and historic tax cuts, all Americans are reaping the benefits of the Trump economy, and the golden age has just begun, according to White House Deputy Press Secretary Anna Kelly. The average American taxpayer will see a tax cut of $3,752 thanks to President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, according to this new analysis, which finds the landmark legislation will reduce federal taxes on average for individual taxpayers in every state and create nearly 1 million new high-quality jobs. Now, the historic law, which includes no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, an expanded child tax credit, Made in America tax breaks, small business tax cuts, and much, much more. Truly a cornerstone of President Trump's economic agenda, which is taming inflation, driving historic infrastructure investments, and fueling a blue-collar wage boom. So from the Tax Foundation, estimating that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will reduce federal taxes on average for individual tax filers throughout the country. The average tax cut per taxpayer will be what I mentioned, the $3,752 in 2026. And Tax Foundation estimates that this act will create about 938,000 full-time equivalent jobs over the long run, ranging from more than 132,000 jobs in California and 81,000 jobs in Texas to about 1,700 new jobs in Vermont. So promises made, promises kept in the rebuilding of the American economy. As you've been with us here at Right Side Broadcasting Network now for about 2 hours and 20 minutes, covering the latest from the Trump White House inside and outside of the Beltway, with great interviews from those making a difference, whether it's your neck of the woods or miles and miles away. Americans all over this country love this golden era, and you can contribute to that by donating to Right Side Broadcasting Network. And we're very appreciative of those dollars because it helps our mission against the big corporate legacy that sometimes has a very un-American and globalist and, quite frankly, communist agenda. Support us right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network by going to rsbnetwork.com/donate or by texting RSBN to 801-801, rsbnetwork.com/donate, or by texting RSBN to 801-801. If you're old school, you like writing a check or two, well, we have an address for that. 1550, that's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in Auburn, Alabama, 36830. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, the loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thank you for your support on the right side of history. And please, please, please make sure that you're getting your gut health in charge and ready to go. One of the best ways to do that, drink pure, live pure with covepure.com/RSBN. Protect what matters, your health, so that you could do the best at your job and your responsibilities as perhaps a mom or dad, or simply getting out there into the workforce, or like the people behind us, working hard in those college classrooms to make America great again. Protect your health. Now look at this. Utah and Florida passing legislation to get the fluoride and pesticides and chemicals out of your H2O, your drinking water. We saw how governments have failed communities in the past. Just look to Flint, Michigan, and what happened in that water supply. But we know over 50 years now, RFK Jr. was right. Our Health and Human Services Secretary, who took on big corporate entities, to those insiders who said, oh, you're crazy, Robert. There's no way that fluoride's in the water. Well, his case has been proven true, and thank God he took them on as one of the finest attorneys protecting those rights to simply drink pure, good water. Now, JAMA Pediatrics also doing a study that says for children drinking out of the tap, whether it's outside the hose or goofing around outside in the summertime, or simply from the tap in your own home, that their IQ points can go down over 2 points as a result of ingesting this on a regular basis. So a reverse osmosis system is of the utmost matter to protect you and your family. covepure.com/RSBN. Get $200 off the clear water technology, a breakthrough at Cove Pure. And look at the size of that on your countertop. Easy to put next to the coffee machine or to keep in that den off to the corner or in your office to make sure you remain hydrated throughout your workday. CovePure.com/RSBN. Drink pure, live pure, as we seek to serve you in the purest of ways here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, covering all of the latest from the Trump White House, both inside and outside of the Beltway. And we will take a quick commercial break for sponsors, but stick with us as we come to somewhat of a conclusion with our broadcast today, covering the latest from the Trump White House. But we'll cover what the vice president is up to in the meantime. I'm Robert McNeely. Stick with us after a quick commercial break.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door. Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Robert McNeely at 425 on the East Coast, 125 on that golden West Coast. Thank you for joining us across America and perhaps across the world as we cover the latest from the Trump White House, both inside and outside of the Beltway. And today, the 50th Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, joined by the Pentagon Chief, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Special Assistant to the President Stephen Miller to highlight all of the safety protocols taking place now that D.C. has been federalized to protect itself. This is something that dates back to the constitutional prowess of the founding documents, that in Article 1, Congress ultimately responsible for this, but also the National Guard of Washington, D.C. instituted by Thomas Jefferson, and that they report directly to the President of the United States. And as you saw just 9 days ago at that White House press conference, that President Trump in the James S. Brady briefing room in the West Wing, there with Doug Burgum and Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Judge Jeanine Pirro, who had a follow-up press conference. Those legal experts and law enforcement agents focused on making the federal city both safe, clean, and beautiful once again. Here's an update of the Vice President joined by cabinet members to address not only the National Guard and the great work they're doing at Union Station, but also how the proof is in the pudding, even amongst wild protesters.
So, look, guys, what we want to do here was a couple things. First of all, we're going to say come and say thank you to the National Guard's folks, to the cops, for actually keeping this place safe. If you look at what's happened in Washington, D.C. in just the past 9 days, we've seen a 35% reduction in violent crime. We've seen over a 50% reduction in robberies. We are seeing really substantial effects because these guys are busting their ass. So I want to come here, highlight what they're doing, say thank you in person, obviously pass out a few burgers, but most of all, just send a message to the American people. Look, we don't have to live like this. We do not have to allow our cities to be taken over by violence and by disorder and by chaos. You can actually do stuff. You can actually bring law and order to communities. You've just got to have the political willpower to do it. And I think you hear these guys outside here screaming at us. Of course, these are a bunch of crazy protesters. But I'll tell you, a couple of years ago when I brought my kids here, they were being screamed at by violent vagrants, and it was scaring the hell out of my kids. And one of the things that we've done already in Union Station in just 9 days is we've made it a place where people can walk around safely. They can bring their kids again. They can see this beautiful monument, the architecture. They can have a meal with their friends and their loved ones because, again, we brought some law and order back to Washington, D.C. So I want to thank Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller. I want to thank all the people, the guardsmen here and the police officers who have worked very hard. And I know that we've traded now some violent, crazy people who are screaming at kids with a few crazy liberals who are screaming at the vice president, but I think that's a very worthwhile trade to make because we want our people to be able to enjoy our beautiful cities. And the last thing I'll say is to the American people, D.C. is already safer than it was 9 days ago, but we're going to make it safer still to come. This is your city. You should feel free to come and visit here, have a meal, see all these incredible monuments, and actually enjoy yourself, and that's what we're trying to make happen. And I think that if we set a standard in Washington, D.C., that political willpower can bring some common sense law and order back to these communities, then maybe some other communities and other cities will follow suit. So it's kind of crazy. You hear these guys outside. They appear to hate the idea that Americans can enjoy their communities. They do the fact that D.C. a week ago had a higher murder rate than Trinidad and Tobago, which the United States State Department has said you shouldn't visit because it's unsafe. We ought to be able to enjoy great American cities. That's what we're trying to do with the Trump administration. And we want to thank all of our law enforcement and National Guardsmen for making it possible. We made a lot of progress in 9 days. We're going to make a whole lot more. I'll let Pete and Stephen Miller say something, and we'll take a few questions from the reporters. So, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. I'll just start by saying yes and amen to everything you said. The American people, the residents of D.C. deserve a safe and beautiful city. That's our mission. That's what every one of these captains, lieutenants, staff sergeants, specialists, privates, they're here because they're patriots who serve the country and believe we deserve a beautiful, safe capital. And when I talk to all of them, Stephen, we've all had a chance to talk to them, they're proud of this mission. They're proud to be a part of making sure law and order is established here in the capital. We're resourcing with everything they need, working with our law enforcement partners. So the National Guard, the Defense Department, is proud to be standing with you and the President and ensuring we have a safe capital that is beautiful, that residents can come visit. And we're committed to this mission just like the one at the southern border and in Los Angeles. Our law enforcement officers deserve to be able to do their job safely. And American citizens, putting American citizens and our country first, is something President Trump has emphasized from the beginning. So thank you to these troops. I know I always liked a good cheeseburger when I was in uniform, so hopefully we can deliver a few of those. It's an honor to be here with you, and also thanks for everything you're doing.
Thank you. And first of all, thank you to the Vice President for bringing this here today. Thank you, Secretary, for your leadership, and most importantly, thank you to the men and women of the National Guard. I think here's the most important point. There are residents who lived in Washington, D.C. their entire lives. Their parents lived here. Their grandparents lived here. And they have lived for generations in intolerable conditions of crime and decay. There are parts of the city, I moved to the city 20 years ago. There are places where I've seen graffiti that has been untouched for 2 decades. There are homeless encampments that have made it impossible for families to use public parks and public recreation for as long as I've lived here. There are hundreds of residents of this city who are shot in street violence every single year, making it one of the most violent cities on planet Earth. And for too long, 99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of this city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots, they have no connections to the city, they have no families they are raising in this city, they have no one that they are sending to school in this city, they have no jobs in this city, they have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1% the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the Vice President are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address another thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers. So we're going to ignore these stupid white hippies that all need to go home and take a nap because they're all over 90 years old, and we're going to get back to the business of protecting the American people and the citizens of Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Stephen. A few questions.
Mr. Vice President, why are troops stationed here at Union Station on the National Mall instead of areas in D.C. where crime is statistically highest?
Well, if you've ever been to Union Station in the last few years with your family, you know that crime is actually extremely high right here in Union Station. You have vagrants, you have drug addicts, you have the chronically homeless, you have the mentally ill who harass, who threaten violence, who attack families, and they've done it for far too long. This should be a monument to American greatness. This should be a place where you can come and share a meal or go shopping with your family. It should not be a place where parents of small children are afraid to bring them because, to Stephen's point, we've empowered criminals over the people who actually need public safety in the city. So I think Union Station is a great example of what's possible when you actually have the political willpower to bring law and order and common decency back to the public spaces of the United States of America. So many Americans live in cities. They occupy these spaces. They know how unsafe they are, and they would love to be able to just live their life in places like Union Station without violent criminals making it impossible. We have changed so much in 9 days, and I thought it important to highlight how great of a space this could be, how easy it could be to actually enjoy something like Union Station if you just had politicians who stopped prioritizing violent criminals over the public citizens who deserve public safety in their own communities.
And to add to that real quick, we talked to a first responder before we came up here, said this is their #1 call location is Union Station for first responders. So it's not as if this is insignificant. In many ways, this is part of the epicenter. And we go to that and return it to a safe location that it should be. It also frees up resources around the city. And you've seen a majority of the arrests happening in a lot of those places that need help.
Right.
Will you extend past 30 days? Will you extend past 30 days, and do you think you have congressional... Will Congress go along with it?
Well, look, we'll ultimately let the President of the United States determine where we are after 30 days of this emergency order. I think that we're going to make a lot of progress over the next 20 days. I think that we're 9 days into this thing. But if the President of the United States thinks that he has to extend this order to ensure that people have access to public safety, then that's exactly what he'll do. If he thinks he doesn't have to do that, obviously he'll make that determination. But what we're going to do is try to empower these guys to do as good of a job as possible to bring public safety and order back to Washington, D.C. This is the national, cultural, and political capital of the world's greatest nation. And you talk to people, black, brown, white, so many of them are afraid to bring their kids into its public spaces. It's a shame. It's a blight. It actually should make every American ashamed that the world's leading superpower, our national capital, was unsafe for families to walk around at night. That is a disgrace. We don't think that it's acceptable, and thank God we have the presidential leadership to change it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Were crime statistics manipulated by the D.C. police?
Well, I think that crime statistics all over our country were massively underreported because a lot of people would pick up the phone, they'd call somebody, they'd try to get help, and nobody would show up. If you look at wait times, at 911 response times all across our country, but certainly in Washington, D.C., they were way too long. And that wasn't because of the D.C. police. That was because there was too much crime and too few law enforcement agents on the street to bring order and decency to this city. You talk to these guys. I talked to 3 police officers earlier. I've talked to the National Guard. They are so happy that they've been empowered to do their job, which is to make American streets safe for American citizens. And I think that empowerment is going to keep on going until we make America, and D.C. in particular, a safe place to be.
What evidence do you have or that the DOJ has? Are you going to be releasing it?
I'm sorry?
Are you going to be releasing evidence of this?
Of what? That D.C. has a terrible crime problem? You just got to look around. Obviously, D.C. has a terrible crime problem. The Department of Justice statistics back it up. The FBI statistics back it up. Just talk to a resident of this city, this beautiful, great American city. Don't they deserve... I mean, we talk about human rights. We hear these people outside screaming, "Free D.C." Let's free D.C. from lawlessness. Let's free Washington, D.C. from one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Let's free Washington, D.C. so that young families can walk around and feel safe and secure. That's what we're trying to free D.C. from. And as Stephen said, it's kind of bizarre that we have a bunch of old, primarily white people who are out there protesting the policies that keep people safe when they've never felt danger in their entire lives.
Which cities are next? Are you going to target any other?
Mr. Vice President, thank you, Mr. Vice President. What are your thoughts on the establishment media's criticisms of President Trump's push to end the Russia-Ukraine war?
Well, I'll let these guys jump in. I mean, look, on the Russia-Ukraine war, we'll obviously have time to talk about that. I think the president campaigned on being a president of peace. He's already ended 6 wars. He's trying to end another. I think it's kind of disgraceful that the American media is attacking the president for trying to bring peace to the world. But most importantly, the president is trying to bring peace to the streets of our own cities. I really can't overemphasize this enough. It's the greatest country in the world. We've got moms and dads and young families. Shouldn't they be able to enjoy public spaces without vagrants taking away basic public safety from the American citizenry? The fact that it's taken so long to bring common decency and law and order back to Washington, D.C. is an indictment of a generation of failed leadership. And I hope these guys know how grateful we are that they're doing the job that so many failed to do. They're actually keeping the city safe. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard. What's your message to that?
I'm sorry?
Polls show that a majority of D.C. residents don't support the Guard here. So what's your message to the majority of D.C. residents?
I'm highly skeptical that a majority of D.C. residents don't want their city to have better public safety and more reasonable safety standards within Washington, D.C. I don't know what poll you're talking about. Maybe the same polls that said Kamala Harris will win the popular vote by 10 points. Okay, we're going to stop there. We're going to grab a quick bite with some of the soldiers here and the National Guardsmen who are keeping the city safe again. I just want to say we're grateful to these guys. You guys are making D.C. safe again. We're proud of you, and we're grateful to you.
Russia City today needs to be...
And comments there earlier today by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, and Special Assistant to the President Stephen Miller, highlighting the reduction in crime bigly in the last 9 days. It's been a great success since home rule has been invoked in our nation's capital. Thank you to the great sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. Tax Network USA, tnusa.com/RSBN. Settle those back taxes now. Protect yourself from the IRS. Call today, 800-357-1415. That is 800-357-1415. Tax Network USA Incorporated. Protect yourself from the IRS. Settle those back taxes now. Visit tnusa.com/RSBN. Again, 800-357-1415. Settle those back taxes today. And mypillow.com/RSBN, the free shipping sale. Mike Lindell's My Cross going for 50% off. MyPillow bed sheets as low as $24.98, all sizes, all colors. The multi-use MyPillow 2.0 under $10, $9.98. I'd go and get one right now because this changed my sleep habits with the 1.0, and it's extremely comfortable. You can take it on the road as well with different themes, as you see. One nation under God. With God, all things are possible. Or if you just like the colors as well, from gray, pink to white, whatever you'd like to choose, right there at mypillow.com/RSBN. 2,000 plus items for your pleasure. And really, to get a good day's success in the books, you need a good night's rest. And Mike Lindell really working overtime in his Minnesota facilities to make that happen. Always excellent to support a defender of the First Amendment and a defender of election integrity and someone who deeply loves this country. Thank you to Mike Lindell for this amazing product at mypillow.com/RSBN. Now, we've covered a lot today from great American patriots throughout this beautiful country of ours, including the 49th state where President Trump and President Putin met last Friday. To recap, Anchorage, Alaska, and what took place just a few days ago to start turning the wheels of peace in a summit that was star-studded from our friend Junior Amave, former NFL player and leadership developer, also someone who was a chief equity officer both under Republican and Democrat mayors in the municipality of Anchorage, someone who really is led to make a difference by the Holy Spirit. And that's the kind of people you want in public and private life, who can be an inspiration for not only the young people in our communities, but those who have those big leadership titles, because sometimes they need to be reminded as well how to make a difference in their communities, being guided by the Spirit and not simply by their own will. Now, lots going on in the summertime as we approach. Most people are back in school now, as we had an opportunity to interview Ryan Walters of Oklahoma's State Superintendent Office and just the great work that they're doing, merit-based pay for the teachers, something that the National Teachers Union not too thrilled about, but makes a lot of sense to bring the best using PragerU's own civics test in order to make sure that Marxism and communist thought not riddled and spewed all over the classrooms in Oklahoma, but rather the ability to debate, the ability to dialogue, and to teach actual biology, like there's 2 sexes, not 27, according to Governor Gavin Newsom of California. So we cover it all here on Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk, including everything going on with the White House and President Trump via all kind of different platforms, but especially True Social, which keeps us up to date on the most important items coming out of your house, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So in case you missed it, the superstar Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, has been on a roll defending the administration's great policies. And she comes out with a MAGA Minute that's usually every Friday, Saturday, towards the end of the week. But in case you missed it because of the busy summer holiday season, or simply getting your kid all ready to go at their local college, ideally right here in Auburn, at Auburn University right behind me, here's the MAGA Minute from last week.
It was another busy week here at the White House, delivering results for you, the American people. Let's dive into how we made America great again this week with another MAGA Minute. The president implemented a federal takeover of Washington, D.C. to restore law and order following years of out-of-control crime that has already yielded more than 100 arrests for firearm offenses, narcotics, assaults, and homicides. President Trump visited the Kennedy Center, where he delivered remarks and unveiled the 2025 Kennedy Center Honors nominees. John Deere, Ford, GE, and AbbVie announced billions of dollars of new investments in the United States, and small business sentiment reached a 5-month high this month. The July inflation report came in below expectations, with real wages having risen every single month since President Trump took office. That means more money in your pocket. The president announced that there will be no tariffs on gold. 110,000 Americans have applied for jobs at ICE since it began its recruiting effort. And if you're interested, check out join.ice.gov for more info. Pending claims at the Department of Veteran Affairs are now down 37% since President Trump took office, because our nation's veterans deserve better. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard declassified more documents exposing the Russia hoax, and former DNI James Clapper, who abused his office in historic fashion. And in addition, FBI Director Kash Patel revealed that disgraced Senator Adam Schiff leaked classified intelligence to shape political narratives in his attempt to hurt President Trump. The president is now on his way to Alaska for a historic bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the hopes of ending this brutal war, and he will keep you posted on how that goes. I know you're not tired of winning yet, and neither are we. Make sure you tune in for more updates on next week's MAGA Minute.
So the masterclass of press secretaries, the superstar, as President Trump puts it, on full display, and how she has represented this administration truly in an extraordinary way. And she had a reminder to a New York Times reporter of just that yesterday during the press conference in the James S. Brady briefing room. And we have a highlight of that in case you missed it.
With all due respect, only a reporter from the New York Times would ask a question like that, Sean. The president met with all of these European leaders at the White House 48 hours after sitting down with President Putin on American soil. In fact, there was so much progress in the readout that was given to these European leaders immediately following his meeting with President Putin that every single one of them got on a plane 48 hours later and flew to the United States of America. And if I could just read for all of you some of the statements from those European leaders yesterday. You had President Zelensky himself saying it was a very good conversation. It was really good. We spoke about very sensitive points. The Secretary General, Mark Rutte, it was the president, only because of the president, that this deadlock was broken, but with President Putin by starting a dialogue. So these leaders, who this war is in their backyard, are very grateful that the president took that call and that he was there to provide them with a readout of Russia's thinking on this, something that was not done by the previous administration at all.
You want the medical freedom to make your own decisions. It's common sense. We're Americans after all. And sometimes your doctor won't prescribe it. Sometimes PBMs get involved. These are the insurance companies that take advantage of your local pharmacy and double dip against you, the American people, because let's be honest, they're slaves to the pharmaceutical empire. Now, you need All Family Pharmacy, your go-to online pharmacy, to get ivermectin, mebendazole, NAD+, methylene blue, and life-saving medications that can protect you from bacterial and viral infections, including new studies stating that it can bring you down from those evil cancer cells. So lots going on, and this pharmacy wants to protect you in light of these recent studies. Now, just request the medications you want online. There's no red tape, no insurance, no problem. You are good to go. The order ships within 2 to 3 days. Their goal is simple: to put your health back in your hands, because when you need that treatment, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it. With All Family Pharmacy, you can keep essentials on hand and take it on the road with you as you close out your summer vacations, especially with the upcoming Labor Day. So scan that QR code now. Ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. Code RSBN10 for an extra 10% off. And if you like what you see here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, we have been on the air now for over a decade, committed to you, bringing you rallies and live shots. As you see in those pictures from the 2024 campaign, there's North Carolina with the Vice President and President Trump shaking hands of our great troops and National Guard who protect us on a daily basis. Remember Trump Force One? It was a good time. Support us here right at Right Side Broadcasting Network. You could do that going to rsbnetwork.com/donate or by texting RSBN to 801-801. We also have an address if you'd like to send a check. 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6. That's Box 344. Again, 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, in the loveliest village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, 36830. Thanks for your support in this era of new media. So much changing in this landscape, but our goal is to bring you the truth and to allow you to make up your mind with expert commentary, analysis, anchors, reporters, great writers as well. You can catch that at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter for all of the written word, including a Sunday devotional that's great to reflect upon before you end up in your house of worship to further glorify God. We're all about that here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And people say the right side of history, really it's the correct side. It's common sense. It's an approach of right-wing populism that has made really a difference ever since President Donald Trump came down that golden escalator 10 years ago in order to make America great again. And our founder, Joe Seals, had that vision when mainstream outlets simply said, oh, this will go nowhere. I mean, one of the funnier things to watch on YouTube is the recap video. I believe it's around 30 minutes of the so-called elite saying that President Trump will never be president, including former President Barack Hussein Obama, who did the mic drop on Jimmy Kimmel's show on ABC saying, well, at least someone will be president or go down as a president, critiquing President Trump's tweet from way back in those early days of the 2016 campaign. But it's an extraordinary story of someone who's been through lawfare to fake impeachments to assassination attempts. His family's been through hell and back, and you have someone as tender as a first lady as we have, beautiful and flawless in her own regard, sending that letter to Vladimir Putin, really appealing to the heart of the man, if there is one, to stop the killing and the abduction of children. This family focused on stopping the killing, stopping the wars, and protecting this great American experiment nearly 250 years young. And some of that demonstrated in an extraordinary way from this past Monday, a recap video of European leaders coming to the White House to visit with President Trump and President Zelensky of the Ukraine to bring peace to a war-torn area over the course of the last 3.5 years. And as we wrap today, the latest news from the Trump White House, we are grateful for all of you, the viewers here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, to talk to people in Oklahoma today, to Alaska, and the rest of the lower 48, because regardless of your zip code, it all matters, whether it's education, the border, to international security, and deals that will bring you an average of $3,742 in tax breaks come next year. It's a golden era that we're living in, and President Trump continues on an aggressive but peaceful path in order to make America great again. But keep in mind that many of these policies across other states are the reason that people either leave or go elsewhere to find a better way of life. Just for example, California's sanctuary policies gave way to Florida tragedy. And Governor Ron DeSantis of the free state of Florida stating that recently. He has a cheat book or a cheat code within his governing book. Just look to New York, Illinois, or California for any way about doing things and just simply do the opposite of what those governors have chosen to do. And perhaps if you look at the biggest losers of the week, it tends to be Kathy Hochul of New York and J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, Gavin Newsom of California, let alone mayors like Brandon Johnson in Chicago and Karen Bass in Los Angeles, who seem to put their own interests ahead of the personal safety of their residents. 3 innocent Americans are dead after an illegal alien semi-truck driver attempted an illegal U-turn on the Florida Turnpike. This caused a minivan to violently crash into the truck's trailer. Now, the illegal alien is an Indian national who was granted a commercial driver's license by the so-called sanctuary state of California, whose reckless policies put the lives of American citizens at risk every single day. But instead of acknowledging the tragedy, criminal illegal alien sympathizer Gavin Newsom callously doubled down on this policy, claiming that driver's license, the CDLs for illegals, actually improves public safety. I'd love to hear the reasoning behind that, Governor Newsom. Again, you're always invited here at the live desk to discuss just why that is your position and your policy. Now, while Democrats put criminal illegal aliens over the Americans they claim to represent, the Trump administration provides no such safe harbor and is seeking to place individuals into removal proceedings who commit these atrocious acts. And according to Kristi Noem, the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, how many more people have to die, innocent people, while Gavin Newsom continues to play politics amongst the American public as he seeks to run for the 2028 nomination for President of the United States? A worthy question in this golden era. We'll stick with it here at Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk on a daily basis. And although every day really is Christmas, presenting you with this amazing policy and track record of now a second term of an administration, 200 plus days into office at the White House in your federal city, as the sun extraordinarily shining upon the People's House, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, a museum, a workplace, and the home of the First Family, as it becomes restored with new flags on the front and south lawns and an ornate area to dine and relax in the Rose Garden. Also, that presidential ballroom, which will be extraordinary. If you've been to the one at Mar-a-Lago, it's really quite fantastic for a number of different events. D.C. will have a nice little facelift, as every president gets to put their mark on the White House, as they should, and this president doing it in perhaps the best way ever. We'll stick with it here at Right Side Broadcasting Network Live to bring you all of this unbridled access to your 47th president, 50th vice president, and the 119th Congress. In addition, tomorrow is Thursday, and football season is right around the corner, although there's preseason before you catch the great New England Patriots. I'm sending that out there because of Mr. Producer. He loves those Patriots out in New England. Be sure to catch 6 o'clock. The Voice of Reason. We have a couple of great guests tomorrow, one very familiar to the network, so be sure to tune into all of The Voice of Reason every 6 o'clock Eastern on Thursday nights right here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. And we also have a special surprise potentially tomorrow during the day. So take work off, stick into RSBN, and tune in to watch all of the unbridled coverage of your elected representatives that you put into place back on November 5th of last year. Can you imagine? I mean, it's August 20th already. How are we moving through 2025 so fast? So what's the lesson in that? Hug the ones you love, spend time with your friends and family, and making a difference in your community. Guess what? It's 5 o'clock somewhere on the East Coast, 2 o'clock on the Golden Coast. I hope you have the most wonderful afternoon and evening. I'm Robert McNeely. It's been a pleasure to be with you these past 3 hours. For all of my colleagues at Right Side Broadcasting Network, God bless you on this hump day, Wednesday, August 20th. We'll see you very soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can scan that QR code now, RSBN10. That is the code, easy to remember, for 10% off. This is ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, antibiotics that will save you and yours from bacterial and viral infections, NAD+, and much, much more. 200 essential medications and emergency medical kits, the meds you trust delivered to your door.